Go through the thing and make it run. Okay, good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of June 9th, 2016 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our website at www.glendale.ca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Benlian.
Here.
Board Member Charchian.
Here.
Board Member Malikian.
Here.
Board Member Mardian is absent, and Chairman Simonian.
Present.
The report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on June 1st, 2016. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication cards.
Neither do I.
And none received. Which brings us to staff announcements. The first item on tonight's agenda, which would be case number PDR 1603633 for the project located at 401 through 409 Hawthorne Street, is being taken off the calendar, off the agenda, and continued to a date uncertain. That particular project will be re-noticed. So provided we need a motion to continue. Is there a motion?
Do we have a motion?
I'll move to continue the case number PDR 1603633.
Okay, and a second? Is there a second to continue?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Board Member Benlian. So in terms of a roll call to continue to dates uncertain, a motion made by Board Member Malikian, a second by Board Member Benlian. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
No.
Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
And Chairman Simonian?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 3-1. And at this point in time, I would like to turn the hearing over to Chairman Simonian, yet before I do so, it appears that the applicant for the next case on Roberta Avenue is running a little bit late. So I'm not sure if you would like to take the items out of order at your discretion.
We could move on to the Justin property case, if staff is available to start us off on that one.
Sure.
Is that the preference for staff?
It would be. We're hoping that he's coming through the door as we speak, but it does not appear so.
Do you see someone?
So,
Okay.
no. So if you don't mind, then we would be taking items out of the...
In such a case, then, our next case will be PDR 160-75918, and the Roberta case will be heard last.
Just works today. Okay, I will be presenting for Milka Toledo, and forgive me if I seem unprepared, but I am a little unprepared. This proposal is to demolish an existing single-family house at 1246 Justin and build a new two-story, 3,000 square foot single-family house. The application description in the staff report says to remodel an existing 400 square foot detached garage, but I believe it's actually going to be new construction and new location, so we can verify that with the architect when they present. With your permission, I'll come up and point out some of the features of the proposal. We have our stick. This is our pointer. Here it is. Okay. The This is on a block primarily consisting of single-story houses, though there are at least 3 two-story houses, including one 2 doors down from this project. You can see on the site plan, the existing house is pushed very far back on the lot, and the lot's about 170 feet deep and 60 feet wide. Here you can see the garage is just shifting a little bit to the corner of the property, and I believe that will be new construction. The house has been determined not to be historically significant. It was built in 1923, but has gone through several additions over the years and doesn't retain any of its original character. It's still an older property. The new house, like I said, is 2 stories. You can see in the rendering it's a Spanish colonial revival style, or a neo-Spanish style, we sometimes call it. The second floor is set back considerably from the front. It's from the front facade, it's set back 7.5 feet here, or 7 feet here, 10 feet here, and about 15 or so feet from this extension at the front. So we have the single-story living room wing projecting forward. We have an arcaded porch, giving it more of a sense of depth, and then the second floor recessed back from that. At the side facades, we have the same types of recesses, so you can see there's articulation at both of the side facades, especially at the second floor, where we generally look for that kind of articulation. You can see it has a simple hipped roof plan. And what else do we have to say about this? There were 2 things I noticed that aren't in the staff report that the board might want to consider. One is a potential code issue where there was a proposed barbecue area here, which is in the side setback area. I don't believe that would be allowed there, so we would be able to work with the applicant. There's also a trellis structure proposed there, so we'll have to work with the applicant to pull that out of the setback and redesign it. The other is a small issue that I just personally thought we might want to call to your attention, which is the windows are a mix of casement and single hung. We especially allow that, even though we generally look to see for consistent window types. When we have a situation like this on the porch where outward swinging casement windows wouldn't be appropriate. But one thing, looking at the windows, is they have a lot of small panes, which is appropriate for Spanish, but sometimes Spanish houses just have a single horizontal panes without the center vertical. Just calling that to your attention in case you thought that was worth considering. And let's see if there's anything else here. In terms of square footage, the new house is 3,000 square feet. The neighborhood average is just under 1,900 square feet. The largest house within the range of properties we looked at was 4,796. So the property has a 0.29 FAR. And as I said, it's a 2-story house in a largely single-story neighborhood, but we think that the massing of the second floor has been effectively modulated to help it not have any significant impacts on the neighbors. Do you have any questions?
Do we have any questions for staff?
No. There should be one email that I received on your desk. Let me run and go check with Manu. She should have put those out there. And the letter was in opposition to several features of the property, but many things weren't germane to the design.
And are there pictures of the building itself? Because I know in the pictures that were provided, the pictures that were provided had the rendering as the subject.
It is?
We have some pictures in this package.
Okay.
Actually, those were on the board. They were.
It has the rendering of the proposed project.
It was separate. It was not included in the packet. Oh.
I just saw pictures of the existing.
Okay.
And actually, we're bringing it up on the TV screen,
It's
so
really
that
hard
way
to see on Google. It's funny, I just saw them earlier.
Here they are.
There, okay, good.
Okay. I don't have a speaker card.
No, I thought there was something.
Does the applicant or the owner, yes, please, if you would come up, introduce yourself, and just if you would hand us the speaker card. Thank you. Introduce your name and address, and please tell us about the project.
Found it.
Yeah. 46 Justin.
Okay. What would you like to share with us?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay.
I mean, I worked like over a year with Mr. J and the Milka.
That she printed out.
I mean, they helped me design it.
Normal?
You know, they get the board references. I pretty much like it. So no problem with property.
Okay. Sir, I have a question. Of course. So is your architect here to answer questions?
No, unfortunately, it was a family emergency in South America.
Okay.
Regarding a garage, I can tell you I verified dimensions with Milka. It's 20 by 20 inside. I'm just going to relocate the garage and rebuild a new one.
You're going to relocate the... Can you speak up, please? We're having a hard time.
Yeah, I'm going to push it back and to the side.
You're moving the existing
I'm moving.
garage to the corner.
Yeah, the dimensions are proper for the building code. 20 by 20 inside. And I have an email correspondence with Milka regarding that.
Okay.
What sort of windows are you proposing?
Aluminum.
They're aluminum, everything.
No, well, in the drawings, they're proposed as aluminum-clad wood windows.
Aluminum-clad wood.
Yeah, with external grids and cedar sills.
But it's aluminum on the outside, right?
Well, we differentiate. Aluminum-clad wood looks very different from an aluminum window, so we try to be sure we make clear which one.
And staff might have a better idea of this question, but do we know about the treatment of the window sills?
They're using cedar sills, and the windows will be recessed, which is a natural thing when you use the wood windows.
Okay. And so they've provided those details? Or
Yeah, the details are in the drawing set.
So since the applicant isn't here and I have questions, and we're kind of asking Mr. Platt some of the questions we might ask the applicant.
That's right. That's right.
Do we want to, would you like to maybe consider reopening, closing public comments, reopening staff questions? Because I had anticipated that we'd have questions for applicant.
Sure.
Well, at this point, I got to check to see who else might be in the audience that might want to speak on this
Sure.
item. And at that point, we could close the public hearing, ask as many questions as we desire, and if we need to call the owner up, we could do that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this case? Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the public portion, and it seems as though, Mr. Charchin, you had some questions, so you start us off.
Yeah, so I was going to ask the applicant or their architect if the ironwork, if they thought that the ironwork was appropriate to the Spanish design. It seemed to differ in its ornateness, and so I guess it's a point we can discuss. I don't know if staff can really comment on that. I guess, Mr. Platt, I will ask you that. Do you think that do you have any issues with the ironwork as detailed in the plans?
Yeah, when you have those kind of curlicues that form S shapes that kind of go back to back, that's a very classic kind of Spanish ironwork feature. We thought these were acceptable. They're different from a lot of the ones we see where people are just putting vertical spindles with those knuckles on them, and we felt it was okay.
Okay. And then the other question that I had notated was the area that is hardscaped in the back around the pool, which is going to be under a separate permit. Is there any notation as if that's supposed to be permeable or not?
The way it's drawn, it appears that it could be because it's shown as kind of paver stones with joints between them. You could condition that those joints be filled with gravel or sand laid stone, or sometimes grass doesn't work that well in those, but it's possible to do that also.
Okay.
They do meet their landscape requirement under code, so they're providing over the minimum of 4,072. They're providing 4,200 square feet of landscape area.
And are there any privacy concerns from the second floor that we need to address?
There are no common areas at the second floor, so you don't have any issues there. By moving the barbecue area away, there's a 6-foot perimeter wall proposed, which would solve privacy issues at the ground floor, but also by moving the barbecue away from being up against that wall, it will probably help.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have no other questions.
I have more comments than questions, so does anybody else have questions for staff? No? Okay. Mr. Malekian, you want to start us off this evening?
Give me 1 second.
All right.
I'm just trying to.
We'll come back to you.
Yeah, please.
I just want to confirm that you all should have a copy of the email that came in on this? Okay.
I can go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Malekian.
So overall, I'm okay. I mean, being that we're right shy of the allowable square footage, which is 3,018. This is a 3,000 square foot. But the upper level, it's set back substantially from the front. So I think it's done well. I think there's some little inconsistencies as far as the arches and different window styles that Jay brought up. I would like that to be fixed. I think a consistent window style would be a better, at least the ones that are facing the front. The front, the main or focus window or the arched window, the large fixed window, I would prefer to have a little bit more traditional or just basic arch and getting rid of those grids. It's just it's too contemporary for me. And I think it steps away from this traditional look that we want to get, the authentic Spanish revival look. The other thing that the item that I was checking was, for some reason, the garage roof and the proportions of the garage, to me, looks more consistent than the house itself. And I don't know what the problem is, and I can't really put the finger on it. It may be that
Especially the sides,
the
right?
sides and the wind and the way that the roof is sitting on the top. Maybe the floor to the top of plate height is different than the garage, and then you have more of a gable end in the garage that you can actually see the 4 and 12, whereas there's a lot of hip and gable, mixture of those elements there. I think a study can happen on the plate heights and the window head heights that brings a little bit more proportional, in my opinion. And I could be, the windows, to me, the amount of plaster that we have, and then the top portion of these versus the corbels and the end rafter tails. I think it's just a little bit too close to it, in my opinion. But overall, I think it's done well. A little bit of that finesse and touch up, I think it's going to look really nice.
Mr. Malekian, Mr. Charchin?
Sure, thank you. The two areas of concern that I had was I didn't see, there's, I think, a need for a lighting plan. Make sure that the lighting fixtures that are installed conform to the design, are fitting the design. I think they'll need lighting fixtures for the exterior. The grids on the large window, the monumental feature for the home, I agree, should be on the historical side versus the modern grid feature. And then, in looking at where's that? There we go. In looking at the landscape plan, or what kind of purports to be the landscape plan, I was unclear as to kind of the shrubbery that they're suggesting or wanting to use along the perimeter fence. And I would want to make sure that shrubbery or plant material doesn't create a larger than 6-foot fence line. Some folks like to plant materials that would give them an 8, 9, 10 foot of privacy, and I think that's not really what we're looking to gain here. And I would like to have some specifications as to actually what's going to go in. That's about it.
No, we don't regulate the height of landscaping typically, but, and I'll let Vilya chime in on that. We could certainly find out. There, it looks like most of those plants are Pittosporum.
Yes.
Wheeler's dwarf. So maybe dwarf helps us here, but we can. Oh no, there's also a
so there's silver sheen.
There's also Pittosporum silver sheen, right?
Yeah,
which may be bigger. Yeah.
And then the 15-gallon size. So
We can add a condition to take a look at the proposed shrubs and see whether the maturity, the ultimate maturity height exceeds 10 feet, and then regulate it in that respect. So
I think because it is a large, it's a two-story home, and it's kind of got this perimeter. We don't want it to be then boxed in and have this boxy mass that also has landscaping around it on top of the.
And I guess under the code we can add that it's in effect for 5 years.
Yeah, and then the idea again is not to regulate and dictate what kind of shrubbery they should have, but the idea is that they don't end up with something that makes it this just massive wall that people are looking at. You know, there's some serious examples of where people have utilized landscaping to create massive walls, which under the design guidelines really kind of undo the mass, the reduction of mass that we try to achieve on properties. So that was what would be my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chartian. Mr. Bellion?
I think the design is pretty nice and clean and simple, and in terms of the overall design, I like it. I tend to agree with Mr. Malikian. The windows need to be consistent, stay one type of window used throughout, and also the windows need to go down probably 12 inches from the end rafter tails. Other than that, I mean, mass and scale's okay, location's okay, site planning, they're using the existing driveway, location of the garage in the rear of the property, which is consistent of the neighborhood. It's all fine, so I'm okay. So this is the only two issues I have: consistent windows and that dimension between the rafter hills, and should be dropped like 12 inches. I don't know if the window's gonna get a little smaller or if the whole window needs to drop. I think a study needs to take place and look at the proportions.
Okay, Mr. Bellion. I overall agree with the comments that were made. I'll just kind of echo some and then add maybe one or two thoughts. The biggest item that stuck out to me was, the front elevation was the large bay window and how it was gridded. So I think it would really serve itself well if it is more of a plain window that's more appropriate for the Spanish style. And at times they've even tapered the sides of that arched window opening where it becomes more of kind of a triangular piece almost with the curve at top.
Parabolic, yeah.
Yeah, those are very typical Spanish motifs. The guardrail, the Romeo and Julieta guardrail, again on the front facade, on the second floor above the entry door, seems a bit out of place. It's just added on. It has more of a Mediterranean kind of feel to it as opposed to a Spanish. I think the design would bode well without it. And I echo with everything else that was said. The one item that I think I'm adding new, which is the building seems to, with that crisp stucco look, it seems to be missing some sort of a base to it. At times, when we have some sort of a building base, it certainly adds some character to it. Or right where the columns are occurring and those arches are occurring, at times it's kind of nice to have just kind of a stucco detail that protrudes up right where kind of the guardrails are, the top of the guardrails are occurring. And that could mimic itself and start following the language as presented, again, on the front elevation on the left side where they have the gate, and on both sides of the gate they have that the columns with that column caps. So I think if we start introducing some sort of protrusion around that area, it'll help the building, will give it some more details. So with that, Mr. Platt, do you want to kind of repeat back the conditions holistically?
Yeah, sure. And I had neglected to read the two staff conditions, both which relate to the garage. One is to verify whether it's being moved or rebuilt, and the other was just to verify the internal dimensions, so we'll make sure when the architect's back to verify that. Board comments include make the windows more consistent in their operation type, choosing either single hung, double hung, or casement. Change the front focal point window in the living room to an to a single pane picture window, possibly with a parabolic shape, possibly still with an arched head. I heard a comment from Mr. Malikian at the beginning about inconsistency with the arches. Was that because there are three round-headed arches and then one segmental?
Well, yeah, and also you have another one on the sides, the small little window on the side. So you got.
So would you like to see the front window either be round-headed or a parabolic to distinguish it from?
Well, I think I would rather have the bay window, or if you so-called bay window, that would be a little bit more consistent with the rest of the arches. It'll be.
Okay, so a round-headed arch
rounded, I believe it would be a better choice. Or it could be for the bay window, or it could be a completely a different type of an oval. Like it's just too close. It looks like a mistake to me.
So we'll make it either a round-headed or a parabolic arch for those. I have a question for the board. Talking about lowering the height of the windows, there is something strange going on the elevations. When you look at the head height of the windows under the porch and the front door, which I presume is a 6'8" head height,
right.
Then when you turn the corner, it looks like the head height is going up. So this could be an error on the drawings, and that could solve the problem that you guys are feeling with the placement of the windows. So we'll just make sure that that's consistent and the head height of the windows is lowered.
It'll be probably a 6'8" or 7 foot, and then
right. And since the front door looks proportional, I'm guessing there's a problem on the drawings around
something
facades.
is off. So I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Okay, well, we'll get the drawings consistent with the goal of achieving a little more head height over the openings to get better proportions. We're going to have a condition to show light fixtures where needed, but not too many light fixtures, and we'll make sure that they're appropriate to the Spanish design. We'll have a condition to verify the full height growth of the landscape shrubs at the perimeter and make sure that they're not too tall. And we have the front window. We're going to remove the ironwork from the central arched window at the second floor above the entry. And then a question on the adding detail from Mr. Simoni and adding detail at the front arches. Are you talking about kind of at the spring of the arches, having some sort of kind of molding profile there?
That's right.
Or did you want it to be lower down?
We have the pointer anywhere?
We couldn't find it. So.
On the west elevation, right where you basically have the ornamental metal guardrail that's placed in the porch, kind of at the top portion of that guardrail, if there's some sort of a stucco protrusion that come out of the arched columns themselves, it actually will create some interest, probably a little more true to form.
Okay, we'll have a note to add a molding profile there.
I don't know if you can see from there, but I could point it out on the drawing.
No, I think I get it. I just wasn't sure if you wanted it at the railing height or at the spring of the arch. It's kind of a choice there, but it makes sense at the railing height.
The railing height would, I think, work better.
And that plus the 2 staff comments is everything that I've got.
Okay. Can we entertain a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the project with the proposed conditions.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, would you mind, there was a motion made by Board Member Benlian and a second by Board Member Malikian, or no, Charchian, forgive me. In terms of a roll call to approve with conditions, Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
Chairman Simonian?
Yes.
The motion passes to approve the project 4-0. Thank you. Now, the applicant for the second project, the one on Roberta, is actually in the audience. Would you like to continue?
Well, we had moved that one last, and I believe there's quite a bit of people here for the Sleepy Hollow project. So I think it's fair that we proceed to Sleepy Hollow, and then we'll circle around for the one that was late because everybody else was on time.
Okay.
And so we'll move to PDR 1404342, which is 2580 Sleepy Hollow Drive. Ms. Zimazaitis,
Yes.
take it away when you're ready.
Thank you. Our material board. Am I pulling it up on the screen? All right, the case before you, PDR 1404342, is for a project located at 2580 Sleepy Hollow Drive. Currently, it's an undeveloped hillside lot. It's approximately 1.3 acres in size. The applicant is proposing a 2-story, 3,100 square foot single-family residence with an attached 2-car garage. And as part of the project, and I'll make note of it here, and forgive me because our aerial is not really visible in terms of the screen and the location, you'll notice that the project site is, and if you visited the project site, it's located at the terminus of Sleepy Hollow Drive. So essentially, Sleepy Hollow Drive ends. There is a dirt roadway that the applicant is required to improve with a 20-foot wide roadway that would essentially go to the end of the lot. And you'll notice here, this is it for a fire department turnaround. So this is a code requirement from the fire department to provide the extension of Sleepy Hollow, and this would essentially be a public access, but it would not be for a typical street vehicular traffic.
So is it a public street or a private street?
It's not technically a public street. It's an extension of Sleepy Hollow for access by emergency vehicles.
Fire road.
It's a fire road. Thank you.
But there's no gate, no gate on it.
It's an improved fire road. There is currently no gate. There will be no gate, and the applicant is required to provide this improved fire road, 20 feet wide. Okay. With that said, any other questions quickly? No? Okay. So Sleepy Hollow ends at this location. The driveway is accessed from the end of Sleepy Hollow. They are then extending it, as I mentioned, to the building site, which is located somewhat at the front half of the project site. And again, this is a 1.3 acre site. It has an average current slope of approximately 55.5%, and it essentially goes from the roadway down to the canyon. The project site here at this location, and as part of your staff report, we included a geotechnical soils report, a preliminary geotechnical soils report, as well as the arborist report. And this essentially is uncompacted fill. So whoever improved the roadway here essentially put the dirt on the uncompacted fill at this location where there's a slight berm next to the roadway. And what they're proposing is having to grade this bermed uncompacted fill area, regrade it and compact it to meet engineering requirements, and then construct the house somewhat on the downslope before it hits the existing. There's a slight, small, flat pad in the center of the lot. So they are proposing the house sort of towards the bottom of this particular slope right here, and then utilizing the flat, somewhat pad for their pool and rear yard. The project site also features 10 protected trees on site, 5 of which are proposed to be removed as part of the project. And you'll note here the trees were identified on the site plan, and the ones being removed are the ones that obviously are in the way of the driveway and the home itself. The arborist on record, Ted and Janine Lubishkov, submitted their arborist report. It was reviewed by the urban forester here in the city and has been approved for the removal of those 5 oak trees, which would go into the building, the tree fund as well. Mitigation measures were provided as part of your staff report. Now, except for the driveway and the building footprint and that rear pool deck area, the rest of the required regrading of the upper slope would be the portion adjacent to the new frontage road, which is, again, the uncompacted fill that needs to actually be regraded. The majority of the rest of the lot is going to remain ungraded and undeveloped, so it will maintain its natural look. The improvements on site require approximately 1,015 cubic yards of cut. That is also going to be the amount of fill on site, so there will be no off-site. All grading is to remain on site. The rear deck with a shallow pool is proposed essentially, as I mentioned, on grade, and behind the residence and between the drip lines of oak tree number 8 and number 9 as required or described by the arborist. Just wanted to make note also that this particular project was submitted and has been in evolution for the last 2 years in the planning department due to the nature of the fire roads, of the oak trees, of the location, of the engineering grading. So this project has had numerous meetings with staff over the course of the last 2 years. I think it was submitted in 2013. So it's been that long since it's come to the board. And then last but not least, in regards to the Mass Irish in terms of site planning, there are decorative retaining walls that are proposed. They are required to be decorative per our hillside design guidelines. Those decorative retaining walls would be essentially for the driveway location here and for cutting into the hillside in order to provide the location for the building itself. There is a condition that is recommended by staff that the applicant investigate the possibility of relocating the driveway. There's a protected oak tree right here at this location. So essentially they are proposing the driveway just to it'd be sort of like the southwest side of the tree. There is somewhat of a topo line here in this regards, and that was something that staff said perhaps you can explore relocating the driveway, but the applicant is moving forward with the driveway at its current location. Now that wraps up the site planning issues. In regards to the mass and scale, due to the site planning and the remote location of this hillside lot.
Going back to
Yes.
the site planning and grading, how many cubic yards of export do we have?
0.
Bilia?
As I mentioned, there is no. All of the cut and fill is going to be kept on site.
Where are they putting it in?
So just
Oh,
otherwise, this-
I apologize.
Yeah, we have different numbers here. I don't think
This
this
was-
can, I don't know if this is in the drawing set that we have.
This is in the drawing site. I apologize because it looks like I misspoke. Apologies. There's actually building cut is 2,125. My apologies. 125 cubic yards of building cut, and the driveway is 789 cubic yards of cut. The driveway fill is 38, with the yard fill is 63 cubic yards. So, and I apologize, thank you for that catch. The export is 2,842 cubic yards. Previously, when staff was working with the architect and the applicant, there was a discussion in terms of the house was located further up the hill, and in regards to trying to follow the contours of the site better and to comply with the hillside design guidelines, there was direction to somewhat bring the house further in, and that is part of the design guidelines, so that perhaps there might be more cut or conditions in order to better address the topography of the house. I mean, the house within the hillside development. So
And there's a natural flat area, and originally the house was proposed to cut the entire hill and then fill over what's already a natural flat area. So when the house was moved further toward that flat area, it avoided a lot of that fill, but there's still, because of the site, a considerable amount of cut.
thank you. Yes, and if you'd like, I can go into the history, but that is the previous reiteration had this particular building pad being filled up and raised, and so the cut was going to.
Is no longer.
The fill is comparably minimal now.
The fill is minimal now, correct?
And there's 2,800 cubic yards of export.
Of export.
Question. You have allocations as to the building cut and driveway cut, but here we have this fire road improvement. Is that going to also require cut and fill or cut?
It will probably have slight modifications through, because it's a gravel. If you've traveled in it and you walked through it, I mean it's an undeveloped fire road, gravel. It will require some, but I believe not significant. I'm going to point to the architect to better answer that question.
Okay.
Has this case gone through Planning Commission in the past?
No, this came in after. It came in. It was submitted when the CUP was still required, but because the CUP requirement went away, the Design Review Board is now charged with taking a look to see whether the project complies, first of all, with all the zoning standards for the R1R zone, and then also with regards to the specific findings for hillside development, which would require you looking at grading, topographical type of impacts, and then also oak trees and whatnot. So you essentially become the hearing officers for this particular case, in addition to reviewing the design review.
Any perspectives?
There was a small perspective, a 3D rendering that was part of your packet.
Are you serious? After 2 years?
I believe, yes. Perhaps Mr. Larry Latchner has additional.
It took 2 years to get that.
So. I know that there were additional photographs.
So,
I'm not sure if, do you have additional questions regarding the site plan? Or would you like me to continue?
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused about what is happening behind there, because there's these sections that are given, and I'm trying to understand this because I don't have any an overall perspective to kind of get a picture of. So it starts off here. This is the
Closest to the curb.
This is the where's
This
the
would
section?
be-
It's right here.
Correct.
This is number 5.
This is correct.
Then you got number 4, which
Which would
you're
be
going down
this
a little bit
location
further.
driveway.
Then you got number 3, which is a lot further. So this is where the road is. And this is number 2, which is road is further back, and you're getting closer to the house. But when you look at this section, which is cutting through there, you only see a retaining wall. You don't see anything. So I don't understand how.
Like where this hill is?
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'm getting the picture, and that's why I wanted to see if there's any perspective, because it's being cut, and that section is being cut. I just want to see relationship between the new slope, the house, where the street is, because right now, if I look at this, right now this house is pretty much level with the street. But when I look at that section,
Like a 40-foot.
I don't.
There's definitely a discrepancy there.
This goes up, and this is one of the reasons why staff and the applicant had such a difficult time with regards, because this project site is completely,
It's
it's a very difficult project site, and especially when you're trying to do the cross sections, you manipulate it one way and you're in a different perspective. So
Sections 2, 3, 4, and 5 seem to reflect close to what's on site.
Right.
Section 1A, the one at the top you just pointed out, definitely.
It
Seems
looks
off.
so out of proportion.
So hopefully the architect can address that.
And even if you look at this top sheet over here at 4.2, you know, the vertical distance between the road and, let's say, you know, here, and they're supposed to be both 8 scale, they're very different, right?
If
You know, you
look-
have about 4 inches here, and you have about 6 inches there of
Okay.
I just was wondering, there's sort of a break here, but it still doesn't make sense with the elevations.
Okay.
And those are very good questions, and these are the type of items that we have been grappling with. So, to go back to mass and scale, obviously what you can see here, this would essentially be the front elevation that is facing the fire road. However, it's located down below the fire road, so it's not readily visible from the terminus of Sleepy Hollow or the fire road, because it is sunken down, facing the slope, the cut slope, the refilled compacted slope. The elevation that would be most visible would be this 2-story elevation. That would be facing the Bywood Drive and Bailey Place from below. But again, the location of it being against this hillside slope, and then with the additional trees, due to the location of the streets themselves and the curvature, there are very few homes that would probably see it, except perhaps across from the valley. Okay, so now the residence, as I mentioned, appears 1 story from the front driveway elevation, 2 story from the rear downsloping lot. The bedrooms are on the lower floors, and the public rooms are on the upper floors. Okay, so the overall height is 31 feet 10 inches, which is below the maximum of 32 feet or 35 feet with a sloped roof. As seen from the north and south elevations, the house design is somewhat terraced and step-backed at the rear elevation facing the slope below, in compliance with the hillside design guidelines. So again, due to concerns previously, this house, in previous reiterations, was set up top and projecting out. So now with the additional grading, instead of being perched out on top of the slope, they have then now sunk it down further in, and then have sort of more refined the terrace somewhat with the hillside below, with then that little flat building pad rear yard area below that. The house is as I mentioned, it's approximately 3,100 square feet. It is the largest in the 300-foot survey area. Its size is somewhat mitigated by its architectural design, the step massing, and the isolated location on the secluded, irregularly shaped lot. So again, you'll notice if you were out there, it is very secluded at that location. So it would be visible from across the valley, but in and of itself, it would not be visible from Sleepy Hollow. Last but not least, in terms of design and detailing, the proposed house is designed in a contemporary style within a neighborhood that features an eclectic mix of architectural styles. The upper story of the house is proposed to be constructed primarily of smooth finished stucco atop a lower level clad of ledge stone, the smooth stucco, the ledge stone. The same stone veneer is used on specific portions of the first upper story to add visual interest to the facades. The house also features aluminum frame windows, painted stucco fascia, asphalt shingles, horizontal metal railings, and glass garage door. Such materials are appropriate for a more contemporary styled residence. There is a flat roof portion and accent bands along with the railing and window design. So there was a flat roof portion and whatnot. It sort of adds to the horizontal emphasis along the elevations, while the shed roofs forms themselves mimic contoured slopes of the hillside. The earth tone color palette is consistent with the hillside design guidelines and is appropriate for hillside development. That concludes staff presentation. As I mentioned, in your staff packet, you received the geotechnical report, the arborist tree report. There was also a letter that was submitted by Jerry Rankin that was included as part of your staff report as well. To date, we've received 2 letters, one in opposition from a Mr. Mark Allen Rothenberg, and one in support from a Mr. Steve Kilegian. So that concludes staff's presentation. If you have any additional questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Yes?
I have a question now. As it pertains to this area, that from what I gathered from the staff's comments was stipulated by the geotechnical soil report to grade.
Correct. Required to be graded.
And did that conversation come up as to ways to avoid exporting all that dirt? Because that's really what's adding a ton of the export cubic yards is just getting that dirt out of there.
Well, and again, one of the previous reiterations, they were grading all this, and they were taking all that dirt and recompacting it and raising this building pad. So we felt, and based on the hillside design guidelines, instead of raising this building pad 8 feet.
Which is the right approach. I get it.
To export
I guess the better question is, I'm saying is, say we had a wall right here, right? And this kind of stayed where it was. Was it just completely unsafe?
Yes, correct. Based on the documentation we had, this was uncompacted fill from the fire road, and that it would have had to have been regraded and compacted in order to develop.
To be relocated on the site or exported?
Correct.
And, another question.
Please.
As far as site planning is concerned, say the home is not placed there, and say the home is placed here, in which case there's really not that much danger of this dirt eroding and going into the home. Was something like that discussed?
Not in the various versions that we saw, no. But again, I don't want to speak. I'm going to allow the architect to best answer that question, because there were multiple versions and multiple locations. But actually placing this home in this location was not one of the options that we reviewed.
That would reduce a lot of debris.
Correct, perhaps. But again, we were told that this area would have had to have been regraded and recompacted regardless.
Well, it makes sense if the house is directly beneath it, but if the house is not beneath it, then one of 2 options could occur. One is relocating that dirt onto that flat area, bringing it up, but not putting a home on top of it where eventually it gets landscaped, or not really worrying about it as much because it doesn't really create a life and safety issue, just the way it is today. Okay. Do we have any other questions for staff? No? Oh, thank you for a wonderful.
I have one.
I was just going to say Mr. Charchin.
Yeah. Where does that dirt road start and the?
It essentially starts somewhere at this location, I believe. I'm going to bring up. I have an aerial image, so if you don't mind, just going ahead and taking this quick. Actually, no. There's one that's in the staff report that I should have.
Okay.
And this is.
Can we start the public process while that's being answered? Sure. Charchin? Okay. I have 2 cards for the applicant and architect, and one is Larry Lachner and the other one is Scott Kendall. Who would like to go first? Come on, officer. Introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Larry Lachner. My address is 20455 East Cabrini Hills Road, Cabrini Hills.
Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here after all this time. Thank you, Vilia. One of the reasons this has taken so long is that when we originally submitted our plans, we had a different planner, Jeff Hamilton, and he retired. So then it kind of sat in limbo for a while till we got another planner assigned. That's one of the reasons. And the second reason is that we did have to redesign this home completely. Our original design was indeed based on a balance. I mean, we balanced this. See, what there is currently is an existing pad on the lower portion of the lot, and it's not a natural pad. I mean, it's, somebody went in there many, many years ago and created that pad. I mean, it's not a natural pad. It's man-made. So what we did is we created a design that eliminated this very loose debris and fill in the front of the property, which is very unsafe, and created a balanced site. I mean, that's what we normally do in virtually every other city that we work in. We do a lot of hillside design. So, and the reason, of course, is to not have to export the dirt and so forth. In that design, the house was a little higher up on the hill. But essentially, what happened is the pad, this created pad, just got raised up as you create it. You do the cut and you create the fill. It's essentially the same exact pad, just higher up. And what that did is it gave us a little better view, and we didn't have to take any of the dirt out of there. But staff said, no, you can't do that. You need to redesign it. We don't want any significant fill like that. So we did. We redesigned it, lowered the house. And, it's essentially the same design. It conforms nicely to the hillside. The other design was virtually the same, just a little higher up. And that's kind of where, we ended up. And that's why it has taken so long, actually. I'd like to address some of your questions here, if I can. The first one is were there any perspectives? Yes, we submitted perspectives, and I actually have them here. I'd like you to see them. This may be helpful.
You have to cancel the Wi-Fi.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe you could email it to staff and they
if you
could
don't
print
mind
it out.
emailing, and that way you can send it.
Yeah. So maybe what you would do is after you're done with your presentation, while you're kind of sitting down and focused, you could email it to staff. Staff will give you one of their email addresses, and then maybe they could try to print it out for us.
Perfect. That'd be great. Thank you. Because, we spent quite a bit of time on these elevations, and it really does. I mean, these perspectives really help tell the story of this site here.
We're glad you have it with you because there was a change in the case planner and et cetera. There's some confusion, but rest assured we'll get some prints in front of us. What were some other comments that you wanted to address that were made earlier this evening?
You had a question regarding, I think these sections here. The program that we use is called Revit, and it's a great program. It shows a lot of really nice things and so forth. But sometimes it's very difficult to see what's going on because when you do a section, that section is right at that point. And this site actually is sort of a, as you see, it kind of rotates like this. So depending on where that section is cut, it looks misleading. But we have gone through those sections 10 times at least, and we know they're correct. So I'm happy to address any specific question you have regarding those. But essentially, what's happening is that we're taking this loose fill, we're cutting it, and
Are you cutting it to a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1?
no, it's 1.5 to 1 actually. 1.5 to 1
And that was what was recommended
by the SOS report.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the questions earlier was the reason you're cutting that is because the geotechnical report had said it's not a good idea to keep it there. But what were those reasons specifically?
Well, specifically because it's when they cut the road in, many years ago, or this fire road.
Uncertified fill.
Yeah, it's very common. They just push it over the side.
But is there a way through retaining walls to kind of retain it, hold it there, keep it there, and not get it all out of there, I guess?
That's essentially what's being. Okay. No, I mean the retaining wall would be 40 feet high. It would be a ridiculous retaining wall. It would look terrible. So that's not a good approach. Oh, I know what it was I was going to address. Yeah, your question was, can we place the house along this little side area of the property? Very doubtful, because there's not enough room. When you get in when you look at the setback that's required, the front and rear yard setback, it'd be very difficult to get a home of any size in there, because they. Can I walk up to the board there, if you don't mind?
We usually have a
pointer.
Oh, we found our pointer.
Oh, hey. Well, I feel reasonably professional. Yeah, okay.
How wide is the property at this section?
At this section right here?
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure. Maybe 40 feet, I'm guessing.
Oh.
It's not very wide. And
If it was 60, you could have done something.
Exactly. But see, this is very steep right here. Very steep. Okay? And so the only real buildable area is right here, and it's just not enough. And not to mention the fact that if you put the house here, it would be long and skinny with no view. So it just doesn't work there. So this is, because there was this existing created pad here, this seemed the most logical, place, because there's all of this, by the way, this whole area is uncertified uncompacted fill. It all needs to be removed, and it is all going to be removed. So the only question was, what's the most appropriate way to design the home in this space? And the way, what we ended up with is, at the request of staff, redesigning it to basically do all cut and take all the cut out of there.
And that initial scenario you had where you were cutting the uncertified fill and you were putting it on top of the existing flat area.
Yeah.
Two questions on that,
Okay.
without going into a ton of details. Is
Yeah.
how much were you raising that existing pad when you were doing that?
11 feet.
And that's all?
That's it.
And then were you going to put multiple retaining walls on the downslope side of that?
No, it's virtually exactly the same design as we ended up with, virtually, okay, except,
I realize the design of the house, but as far as the dirt itself that was going to be placed on top of the flat portion of the site?
it's virtually the same design with regard to retaining walls, okay? In other words, the retaining wall that creates the driveway, the retaining wall that creates the house, and so forth, is basically exactly the same. All that was happening was we were taking the dirt that was being cut, and we're placing it on that pad and raising the pad up.
My question is as well, I understand that.
Okay.
So say the flat area is here, and say
Yeah.
you were moving this dirt, putting it here, bringing
Right.
this up to right around here,
Right,
11 feet.
exactly.
I get it.
Okay.
And so how are you treating this area?
2-to-1 slope.
So you were going to go down and start at a 2-to-1 slope and come up, and then at some
Exactly.
point, did you have a retaining wall down here?
No.
You were going to do 2-to-1 slope, all natural on top of that?
Exactly.
And that was something that the geotechnical was okay with, without
Sure.
having some sort of a...
Well, you've got a bench in at the bottom, of course, but yeah, they're totally okay with that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask almost two questions? Sure. On that plan, how many trees were being removed for that plan?
I think the same, very similar. No difference.
Do you happen to know what the original contours were of this site? I mean,
do.
that pad, how high, I mean, obviously there was no pad, and so what was the general slope of it before the fire road was cut?
Well, the fire road didn't really affect this pad other than creating all this uncertified fill. What happened, in my opinion, and look, this is just an opinion, I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years, but it's still just an opinion. I think that whoever owned the lot previously, what they did is they created this little kind of driveway here. If you can see this here?
Yeah.
It's a walkway. You probably walk down there. They created this, and then they went back here and they cut this pad out. Somebody did that. I mean, I'm 99% sure that's what happened. That was created by man. It's not a natural pad. So this is why we, decided that the best way to approach this would be to simply take this pad, raise it up 11 feet, do a nice balance.
And the
we're
way
done.
it's cut today, is the bedrock exposed? Or how deep is the bedrock?
Yeah, the pad is on bedrock. It's on bedrock.
And it's decomposed granite?
Yes, it is.
Do we have any more questions?
Yes. There was a little bit of unclarity as to the size of the pool. At one point, it said 52 feet. So,
No, that's not right.
well, what is this, the dimensions of the pool, and how many gallons are we talking about?
Scott, how big is this pool?
We can't have cross communication, but Scott,
Okay.
maybe when Scott comes up next, we could ask him.
I think I'm gonna say that this pool is about 35 feet by 20 feet.
Is that under a separate permit, or,
It would be under separate permit.
so it's not even being proposed at this moment except for?
No, just conceptual.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, so have you had any civil engineer look at this project?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any drawings or anything, any documentation, anything that can tell us what these retaining walls or the slope or the grades are going to be proposed? Because we can't really tell from this.
What we did is we took the topographic survey, which is a digital survey, and we digitized it into Revit. So everything we've done in Revit is accurate. Right, so when...
No, I understand, but for me to, I'm not questioning the program, I'm not questioning, I'm here to approve your project based on what you're presenting. For me, it's very difficult to understand these retaining walls and the grade and the slope that is being created, except looking at those sections, and what you're telling me that the program, it's not really showing me all the stuff, so I have to guess on everything. So for example, I need to know where the front entrance is here based on the retaining wall. So if I'm standing here, am I going to look up and see the road all the way up there? That's what it is. Well, that's what the section is showing.
No.
That's what that top section is showing to me.
Oh, no, that's correct.
Okay, then that's what I'm saying. So
Okay.
I just need to understand, what is this retaining wall? When I come out, what is this looking for? And then if I'm standing here, what am I looking at down? Am I looking at, and your perspective was showing it, I'm looking at this flat roof. And so I just don't have that information for me to make a judgment.
I'll be sending that in just a minute.
Right.
But yeah, when you're standing here, there's like a 5 or 6 foot wall right here. So, you'd be looking up at the wall, and then it's sloped up to the street, and you can't see the street. And conversely, from the street, you can't see the house.
Okay, and then, so these oak trees are being removed.
Correct.
What type of, you're planting over there?
24
And you said that you're cutting this to the bedrock. Can you actually plant on this? If it's on a bedrock, can you do that vegetation and planting on that?
Absolutely.
You can actually dig, and every one of them is going to be jackhammered into the bedrock, and then the trees are going to be planted.
Actually, this is not really dense decomposed granite. It's actually fairly. It's like a alluvial plain, so it's actually fairly good material. In fact, it's very rich, though.
What is the spot elevation more or less right here on the fire road?
I'm sorry, the what now?
Like, what elevation is that road right around here someplace?
Right around here, there's actually a berm right here. Okay, so this berm is about 3 feet higher than the road here, and what happens is this road actually slopes back away in this direction.
I'm just trying to reference one of your drawings, and I'm trying to see how accurate they are. What is the spot elevation more or less? Right around here.
Spot elevation right here is about. See, this is. Honestly, I can't read those lines. They're too small for me. But this elevation is only maybe 3 feet below the elevation of this berm.
So would this help?
Yeah, there you go.
cut on
That's
Mike.
better. I can see this better. Okay, 140. Yeah. Maybe 145.
Okay, that's about right. Because you got 40 feet and you're going 1.5 to 1, so you're
Right.
going down 30 feet, and your pad's about 110, so that puts you about 140. which is
Very close.
Oh, by the way, another question that you had that I was going to address is the grading on this road here. Very minor.
Okay.
Very minor.
Do we have any more questions for the applicant? Architect, I should say.
He just threw something out there. So you said the road is going to be minor grading.
Yep.
So let's look at this tree. That tree, the big oak tree canopy here, that kind of hangs over. Now, what is the clearance the fire department's asking for as far as height?
20 feet.
20 feet? Do you have 20 feet under that tree? Yeah, it is. It's a huge tree. It's an old tree.
Beautiful tree.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Larry?
And
Larry, come here. Mail Chris.
the next speaker is Scott Glendale. Come on up and introduce yourself. Now, are you the architect or the owner?
No, Chris is ready to print them out.
I just did the design work, and I did all the plans, so if there's anything...
You're going to need to speak. You place your name, state your name for the
Say
record.
your
and
name for
Hi, my name is Scott Kendall, and I live at 7414 Apperson Street, Tahunga, California. I did the plans with Larry. I helped with the design. I did all the drawings, so if there's any technical questions or things about the slope that maybe you're not sure about, I could answer those for you maybe better, since I sit with this project quite a bit.
Would you like to add anything that has not been said to this point?
The only thing that I think wasn't addressed was the two sections up there where one of them appears to be taller than the other, and the case is one of them is, because the slope of the street changes as you go up. So, of course, that slower section is going to appear shorter from the pad to the street than the upper section, which is cut further up the road where there's an incline. I think they're rough.
The confusing part about this drawing is that I'm assuming that the darker portion of the green is your graded area, correct?
Yes, sir.
So when I'm looking at the contours of the ungraded versus the graded, they're all continuing at the same line, so nothing is being changed. So I don't understand the slope that you're proposing to have, except looking at that section. So that's why I'm trying to understand.
Looking
at
you want
as we're walking out. I mean,
you want a proposed site plan with proposed contours.
I need to understand what the the contour is. I mean, you're taking out 2,800 cubic yards on this thing. You need to understand how are you taking this out? What are you doing with this? And then also, how are you going to retain the leftover dirt that you're going to have? So I got to look at those sections and understand where these retaining walls are and how tall they are, and understand how does that relate to the house that you're placing behind it. So if we are here to approve the CUP eliminated, which is there's no longer CUP, we need to address the 2,800 cubic yards, and how does that work? That's the confusion here.
Okay, so you would like a site plan that shows the graded contours as a with overlaid with
The retaining walls and the top of walls of the
Top of
retaining
walls, the grades, the slope.
Need some civil engineering.
Right.
And a preliminary grading plan with top of walls for the retaining walls.
okay.
And I would invite you to also look into the fire road, because I think that's going to be an additional concern, at least for myself, because if I'm going to consider my duties under the revised process where Design Review Board is obligated to sign off on the cut and fill aspects of a project like this, I don't see that fire road being a minimal project. It's basically you're going from about right here, right, where the road is dirt, right, all the way back here, creating this cutout over here, and that's going to require a lot of dirt being moved around. Those elevations are going to be important. You know, if that oak tree doesn't have the 20-foot clearance, and you're going to be touching a 150-year-old oak tree, and this is going to be the sixth oak tree, that's going to be an issue. You're going to have some problems with getting that passed. So you're going to have to consider for at least for myself, how you're going to address that clearance level for this oak tree and also satisfy the fire department's requirements for height clearance, width clearance, and also turnaround space.
Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
We have some speaker that are available as well that need to
Absolutely.
speak this meeting. And let's try to maybe minimize cross-communication.
You're absolutely right,
between us. And
Chairman.
then once we close the public portion, we could all kind of tell our thoughts and then see where this is going.
Sure. Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Anything
Okay.
else you'd like to add at this moment?
No.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Stephen Dunn.
Hi, my name is Stephen Dunn. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I'm aware that there are probably a number of people behind me here who are against this project. And we live at 2601, which is Sleepy Hollow Drive, which is the second to the last house before the end of the road. And there is actually a gate there right now. I think you mentioned there's no gate, but there is a gate there at this time. And we love the area. We walk around that fire road often, and we've just enjoyed being there. And but I do want to express that we do own lots up there. We do own lots up there, so we come from that perspective. But I wanted to say I'm aware that one of the objections people are going to have is that right now there's a lot of illegal smoking and drinking which goes on there in that. In the road back up through there, and the concern is that if we open this up, that's going to encourage more problems along that direction. And I, from my perspective, right now it's just a problem anyway. I mean, it's just we have beer bottles put in our trash can. People park in front of our house. Almost weekly, especially as summer comes, and they go back up in there, and so I can't see where putting a house right there is going to encourage anything except maybe to provide more people to be watchful for those going back in that area. And I know people are concerned about who'll be coming up about other people developing up in this area. And they think if we allow this, then there's going to be, in this kind of designated wilderness area, there's going to be other people wanting to build up there once this open. If we open that, it's going to open up others. And that road, which is now a fire road, from my understanding, originally was set in through there because at one point the city had designed that area to be developed. There were lots that were sectioned off. We own a number of those. And it was designed, and in fact the owner, the builder who built our house and 2605, the last two houses, after he built it, and he was very involved with the city and with the design review board, and Arthur Jones was his name, that after he had built...
Sir, that's your time limit.
Okay. Thank you so much.
We have a lot of other speakers. We appreciate you coming out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Joan Morris. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joan Morris. I live in Glen Oaks Canyon on Glen Oaks Boulevard, and I've lived there for 31 years. I'm also a member of the Glen Oaks Canyon Homeowners Association. And one of the reasons I moved to Glen Oaks Canyon, and one of the reasons many of us do, is because of the beauty of the San Rafael Hills. And the hills are so beautiful, partly because they haven't been totally built up. And our concern is by putting this additional road on, that is just going to, as the previous speaker said, pave the way for future building. Each developer is going to extend the land more and more, and it's going to forever change our hills. And right now, our hills are so beautiful. They've even gotten national attention because it's the Rim of the Valley corridor project that you've probably heard about. And this is part of the Santa Monica National Recreation Area. Right now, legislation is being written in Washington, D.C. to consider our hills, the San Rafael Hills, to be part of this corridor, which is a national recreation area. And how we access our beautiful hills is through the fire road. We are worried that by building on the fire road, new people will be living there. They're going to have different ideas about, they're not going to want all the hikers, the dog walkers, the bike riders on the fire trail. They're going to have, things are going to start changing with this one home being built. I understand it looks like it's going to be a lovely home nestled in the hillside there. It won't be apparent, but we see it as a wave of the future, and we're unhappy about that. And also by paving the road, as you heard earlier, it's a beautiful viewpoint. You look out over the Los Angeles Valley. People like to go up there. They like to sit. They like to smoke. They like to drink. And one of our board members that you're going to hear from, he has actually counted the number of cigarette butts up there. It's a very big fire concern for all of us, and it's an ongoing concern, and it's not going to be easier by having a road paved and having an easier access to the fire trail, or to these views. So please consider that as you're making your decision of what this is going to lead to in the future and how it's going to hinder our recognition as a national park area with the Santa Monica Conservancy. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Ms. Morris.
Yes.
So putting the road aside for a moment, how do you feel about the project and the design? Are there any issues with it?
As I see it, I'm personally happy to see that it's nestled. It's not going to be glaring above the ridge line. I mean, that's what's really an eyesore. Okay. But I don't know how others feel. It's going to be very visible for everyone living below and around. It's a beautiful chaparral area that's a wooded area. I know a lot of oaks are going to be taken out. So part of our beautiful natural area is going to be removed and destroyed with this. So, I mean, really, we're not happy about it just for that reason.
And so I would take it that your organization, the people that are sitting here, overall the issue is with the road being paved.
Yes, we see it as leading to more development. There are many privately owned lots along the ridge of Glen Oaks Canyon, and they haven't been built on because nobody's been able to get to them. And we see this as the beginning of a wave, and we're not happy, frankly.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Gary Rankin. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Jerry Rankin, and I've lived in Glen Oaks Canyon for over 70 years, and so I'm very familiar with, and I take my dog on these walks every day, in the morning usually. Aware of the brief time for comments, I'll confine my remarks to two issues. First issue, compatibility. I believe one matter that you as a design review board must consider is whether the proposed house would be compatible with its neighboring environment. The closest, most important neighboring environment in this case is not other houses. It is the chaparral, the oak trees, and the other native vegetation that surrounds the site. I believe you must consider what the proposed construction would do to this environment. You must consider the precedent that would be set and the likelihood that this precedent would give powerful encouragement to the owners of private properties that exist on the ridge between Glen Oaks Canyon and Eagle Rock. I'm aware that a number of property owners, should we say land speculators, have a strong interest in this case. Are you, as a board, ready to open the floodgates to development, which would transform this ridge from a beautiful oak and chaparral-covered natural landmark into clusters of houses? Second issue, stability of the building site. I have reviewed the official file on this project. It is slim indeed, considering the importance of the project. The only environmental or geologic report in the file was done by Environmental Geotechnology Laboratory Incorporated, we call EGL, dated July 1, 2013. According to the report, exploratory shallow borings were performed. The report states, additional deep exploration by means of drill rig and or backhoe is highly recommended once the proposed development location is known and access to potential building site is achieved. The question I've got is, has this deep exploration been done on the selected building site? What EGL found on the subject property was plenty of loose fill, but no competent bedrock. According to page 1 of the report, existing road fill and undifferentiated slope wash consisted of mottled brown to dark brown, silty clayey sand and clayey sandy matrix with crushed granite rock fragments to a depth of 5 to 12 feet below the existing grade. On page 4 of the report, EGL recommends... Okay.
Sir, you ran out of time. If you want, if there's somebody else in the audience, they could continue reading your notes, but at this point I must move on to the next speaker.
Okay.
And we will try...
So he could finish?
You could come up and read the rest of his statement. Thank you, sir. He's got to fill out a card. And after, introduce yourself.
Have you filled out a speaker card?
Yes, I did.
Oh, and your name, please?
Rosa, last name Araujo, A-R-A-U-J-O.
Good evening.
Oh, good. If you don't mind, that'd be great. Yes, the speaker card's there. Yes, please.
My name is Rosa Araujo. I also live at Sleepy Hollow in the canyon. I love my area. It's very nice, very private, family environment. As the other gentleman says, he could walk with the dogs. It's very safe so far. But let me go back to his reading, and then I will go back to mine if I still have time. But if a component bedrock cannot be found on site, there is plenty of granite on these San Rafael hills, but precious little granite that can be identified as competent bedrock. It's a cane granite. It crumbles in your hands. The building sites appear to be highly risked from the standpoint of erosion and mudslides, as well as from damage caused by substantial seismic activity, which could happen at any time from the nearby earthquake fault. Who will pay for the proposed house if it is severe damage due to a violent natural event? Will it be the developer? Will it be the owner who purchases the house? Or will it be the taxpayer citizen of Glendale? That concludes his part. Now let me talk about my part. Okay, I have been living in the canyon, and I am very concerned since I hear about this project. There are three main issues that I'm concerned. First of all, we have a nice natural environment on the surrounding ridge, and the lot spread almost to the top of the ridge, where popular viewpoints are currently accessible by walking or by bicycle. If the city approves this project on Sleeping Hollow, then the elimination of the existing lock gate at the end of the pavement of Sleepy Hollow Drive, it will require the fire road to be paved and otherwise upgraded to meet the normal standards of residential street. Also, we believe that the viewpoint will encourage illegal nighttime smoking and drinking and deteriorate our area. Right now, it's still nice. But by opening this road, it will degrade it, and also our value of our houses might go down because of that. Second point that I would like to bring up is that it will be transforming the natural environment that we have now, and not only will be transforming the existing dirt road into a pavement street, will catch the eye of more developers, but also it will bring, or it will set a precedent favoring further developing in this area, which we oppose very deeply. And thirdly, the construction of the proposed house will be inconsistent with the city wilderness designation with the national park plans of San Rafael Hills. So please consider this. I am not the only one, but many of us. Unfortunately, not everybody is aware of these changes or this proposal. Fortunately, we heard about it. That's why we're here. I will hope that you guys consider this.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Paul Rohak.
Paul Wojak, maybe?
Yes? I apologize. Good evening.
Oh, good evening. My name is Paul Wojak. I live at 2605 Sleepy Hollow Drive. So I am the house that is directly across and adjacent to the property that they're trying to develop. And I would highly suggest that if you were able to go and visit that site, because the green area that they're talking about that is very loose fill, if you look at the driveway where they're proposing the driveway to where the pad is, it drops off, I'm going to guess, probably about 20 feet. I do believe that it was a developed area. That driveway theoretically is a harsh cut in a very, very steep sloped area that is very low, very unusual fill that I've tried walking down that and I can't walk back up it. It's just very, very steep, very bad fill when I've had to go and collect something from that fell down that very, very long hill. And the pad that was there was probably man-made, not natural. I probably agree with that. Mr. Jones was the original developer for almost that whole area, and development was stopped back in the 1980s when they had those horrendous fires in Glendale and decided no longer to build on any of the ridge lines. That's why all the development was stopped all through that area. The house that I'm currently living in is the last house that was built by Mr. Jones prior to the disruption of building and changing those practices. There is a locked gate about halfway through that green section on that dirt road. The one thing that I will say is everybody keeps talking about the kind of activity that goes on up there. I live it. I actually have hired private security to come up every night and chase people out of that area, and it's worked pretty effectively because I can't get the city to do it. The city used to have rangers that paid attention to that. They no longer do that. The police don't show up there. We've taken and created parking situations to put up parking signs for no parking. They still park there. They show up regularly. They show up at 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. They go up in the hills. They drink. They smoke. And they throw their trash and lit, well, probably, who knows whether they're lit or not. And it surprised me that we haven't had a tremendous incident. If you develop that road all the way up to the ridge line, I think that it will not only, you'll never have anybody patrolling it because they don't patrol it now. And so I can only visualize that becoming a tremendous sore spot and probably the start of a very, very bad incident for us up in the hills. Not just me, but all of the homeowners, because if you remember just a few years ago, they had the fire that was started down at the base of the 134 and the 2, and we were very, very lucky at 4 o'clock at night that the winds didn't come in that one particular night and burn that whole canyon. So the development, leaving it natural, we're supposed to cut all that stuff down to try and mitigate fire damage. And I think that further development up in that area is not going to make things better. It's going to make things tremendously worse. But I think that there's a lot of I think you're going to have a very difficult time delineating from that drawing and or any of the other presentations that they're going to make to you without actually having seen the site, because that so-called access road is probably only 10 feet wide. The cut is approximately, I'm going to say, somewhere around 60 degrees, a 10-foot wide section, another 60 degrees that goes down another 20 feet or 25 feet to a property that's owned by somebody further down the hill. So it's a very confusing, conflicting kind of a drawing, and I think that, there has to be a lot more investigation on that before you get further.
Sir, you're out of time, but I was wondering if you could come up and point something out.
I can.
Yeah, if you would, approximately where is, and you live in, and we visited it, but it's kind of hard for me to remember at this point. Where is the gate at this point?
Okay, well, you can see, let's see, there's the proposed, is this the proposed site right here?
This
the proposed site is
over in here someplace, right?
Correct.
That's right.
Okay, so you can see the road coming here. The road ends.
This might be an easier.
Oh, okay. So yes. So okay. So I live on these two lots here.
Okay.
and the proposed site is obviously here. The road that they're talking about coming in from comes in from here and goes to approximately right here. The gate is right here.
Right
the
where
road stops here.
S is more or less S, and the Sleepy Hollow is where the gate is.
The gate is, and then further
the
over
road
here is
stops right
about the Y. That is correct. And you know, this actually is, I don't know if that's really 20 feet wide or whether they're going to have to actually make the road bigger or not. It doesn't matter at this point.
And at this point, let's say somehow if the paving of that road disappears.
Correct.
What issues do you have with the design of the home?
Well, I think that, first of all, one of the things that I asked the architect right at the very beginning when he showed up to put up the signs, I said, you know, that's a really unusual site. How are you going to get waste out of there? And he looked at me and he goes, and I said, what are you going to do, pump it? He goes, oh yeah, we'll pump it because that's the normal thing to do. And, you know, we lose electricity up there about 3 or 4 times a year. And so I'm just trying to visualize, if you've got a building where they're going to put bedrooms on the bottom floor, he said that he thinks maybe they can hit the proposed sewage line further down the road. But I think that the sewage line comes up to here. The lot that's down over here is probably a good 40 or 50 feet below?
That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, it should not be a problem? Okay, that's fine. It was just kind of like really strange when I look at the...
But besides that, as far as the mass scale and everything else of the house, is there anything else that pops out? And you're out of time, I'm asking...
I understand, and I'm trying to be quick about it, but when you walk up this road, the only thing you're going to see is the roof of this house.
That's right.
And, you know, and so from a perspective of visualization, I don't know that I can argue it one way or the other, but I do know that we do have already a tremendous amount of problem with that area up there with people and development, or people showing up regularly, and I don't know, you know, taking out more trees and doing all of that other stuff, I don't know if that's going to take and behoove the area or maybe bring other things in.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a good question, but I'll ask it from the podium.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir, I have another question.
Yes.
I'll ask you when you're at the podium, and we can get your response on the record.
Go ahead.
So would you say that the neighborhood is kind of mixed between residents that are opposed to the people that are going to this area and smoking and drinking, and those that are for it becoming a national recreational
I was involved with the council.
terminology.
I don't know if I don't know that I don't understand your question completely.
Well, let me finish my question.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So it seems like there was a speaker earlier that indicated that this area is being considered for a national recreational area designation
That
of
is
some
correct.
sort.
It is.
And so that would indicate to me that there would be more recreational use that would be advocated for this area. I'm also hearing from you that you've hired private security to prevent people recreating in this area, possibly outside of the rules and regulations that the city has for use of the fire roads.
Right.
Do you think that the neighborhood is split between people that are looking for it to be a recreational area and people that are opposed to it?
I think that the concept of recreational area, as opposed to the concept of preserving the naturalness of the area, and as a conservatory, as opposed to it being a recreation area, I think the recreation area might be a misnomer. I think that it's really more about preserving the naturalness of the ridgeline in that area. I don't think that it's necessarily about developing it as a recreational area per se. The rules of the city, and the reason I hired security is that the rules of the city dictate that, you know, you cannot enter fire roads after 10 o'clock. And so after 10 o'clock at night, it becomes illegal. Well, there's a lot of activity that happens from 10 o'clock till, 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. So you've answered fairly well from my understanding. So you're not opposed to people walking their dogs, going there during daylight hours and utilizing that space during daylight hours. It's
correct.
Just the after 10 p.m. use that you're opposed
And I think that when you take and develop this property and make allowances for fire roads and then take out the fire gates, you're going to have people utilizing and misusing a lot of that even further than it's misused now.
I understand you now. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next speaker is Linda Pillsbury.
Thank you. My name is Linda Pillsbury. I live at 2528 Sleepy Hollow Drive, which is about 4 houses down from the proposed house. I've lived there 19 years. I walk my dog up in the hills every single morning between 6 and 7 in the morning, and it is wonderful. There are people come from other parts of the canyon, from other parts of Glendale, from Eagle Rock to walk their dogs and have a good time. So that kind of recreation is already going on, and it's great. It's great for the neighborhood. My concern is primarily with this road. I'm really surprised you don't have the police here with their opinion, because at least 2 or 3 mornings a week there is a lot of trash, and me and other hikers pick it up, and then we put it, there is a trash can there, which the people who go up there could put their trash in the trash can, but they don't. And because they have to walk up the hill, which is a little bit of a hike, there are probably fewer people than if they could drive right up to the ridge, park their car, dump their trash out, and sit there. So I think that there is a real fire problem, a real police problem. And this is a wilderness area, and people really enjoy it for the wilderness. And I think you guys have a chance to decide what you want for the future of Glendale. If you want to create another area that is going to be a constant police problem and a constant fire problem, because they do smoke cigarettes. There are cigarette butts all over. And this is dangerous. There are lots of houses there, and when there's a fire, that's a problem. Or you have a chance to go out. I'm hoping you guys can go up there and look at what it's like. It's beautiful, and the neighborhood uses it, and the community uses it. And I think that's the way we should look at it. And the road will make a huge difference. To pave all the way up to the ridge will bring car traffic all the way up. So
again, if I may, the concern is the paving of the road, not the development of the property, the house.
Well,
obviously people cannot trespass on someone else's property to enjoy them. I mean, you're talking about the road and creating the road.
Well, this is a public. I mean, this is the fire road.
It's a private property. We're here to review the design of the house, and as a condition by the Public Works is the road. So we can talk about that, But
the fire road is in the wilderness area, and the whole Glendale community uses this for hiking.
I'll let staff address this.
Yeah, if I may point out very quickly, it's a recurring theme, and we're hearing you guys loud and clear. Trust me, we're hearing you. This board is empowered to work with an applicant as it pertains to mass scale and architectural design.
Right.
Within the private property. Now, what that also entails is site planning and where to place the house. And where you place the house has a significant impact on how much dirt is moved around. So
right.
just that's kind of what we're looking at. Now, the fire department has requested this road to be paved. And it's a...
That's because they have no access.
What I've seen in the past, this is excessive. It's a big paving of a road for one owner to do. And so we understand what your concerns are. And so what Board Member Malakian is trying to point at is there's different factors as to what this board could look at and has power to assess, et cetera. Now, we will look at all this, and we will talk about all this once the public portion is closed, but I wanted to interject for a moment and reassure you that we do understand what you're saying.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm not sure if you'd like to continue on with the testimony or not.
I thought you wanted to get our attention.
Well, no. Yes and no.
Maybe.
Yes and no. Just to clarify, this is the aerial image. These are the properties along Sleepy Hollow, Edwards Place. The project site, and I apologize that we're not able to go ahead and show this. I could try to download it, but the project site is outlined in blue, And the fire road right now, that's a dirt road that continues on Sleepy Hollow, then makes a sharp turn onto Valley Vista Drive, and there are undeveloped lots at that location. Now, the fire department, and this is something that went back and forth for numerous months with the fire marshal, ultimately there was a determination made that fire road had to be improved 20-foot width and span with a turnaround at the end. And that was just a determination made, set in stone, filed in, that ultimately the applicant had to concede to.
May I ask one question as
yes.
it pertains to that?
And I wanted, yes.
I don't really see the logic. The point is that I understand that the fire department would want to have access to go down the driveway and to fight the fire. But when they're going way past, so in other words, let's say fire said, hey, give us access till here or whatnot. But then when they're going way past here, they're going so way past beyond the developable land where in a sense it's burdening this homeowner with a tremendous cost.
And that is correct. There's a tremendous cost associated with that.
And it's also creating hardship with the neighborhood.
It is.
Right.
And I hear that. The roadway, there was no ability to provide a turnaround area halfway down. That is specifically why the fire department mandated it, that the area be paved all the way down to this hammerhead area so that there can be a turnaround area provided. This area with this drop off of the slope right here, there's no ability to even put a turnaround area at this location. And just make note of it also, this would be a paved fire road as opposed to a dirt fire road right now. There are no utilities, street and curb and gutter, no. So this would not be considered a public street, nor would it provide access for any development on that back area. So you would not be, anyone who owns lots who have been looking at, oh, is this possibly a fire, a road that can then, pave the way literally to have development on that Valle Vista Drive. That's not possible because at this point in time, it's purely a paved road. There's 500 linear feet or more of pavement without any utilities.
On that note, so what we're hearing is this paved area is not being built for street standards. So,
correct.
in other words, they're just putting asphalt on top of it,
correct.
But they are not compacting it. They're not building, putting in caissons, curbs and gutters,
no.
etc.
No.
What I'm trying to understand is the difference between a dirt road and a paved road. If this is an actual public street, what I'm trying to understand is that is it still going to have that gate at the end?
Actually, no. The gate, what we can do, and we can discuss this with the fire department. Sometimes you'll have the gates where only the fire department has access to the locks.
Yeah, or they
like a crash gate.
Crash gate is a possibility.
If there is a gate, which there is.
If there's a gate, the situation will remain the way it is today, and I think the neighbors will be more open to that.
I think just the difference between a dirt and a paved, which is, I'm assuming that they would have some sort of a berm at the edges, not a curb.
They are going to have.
They'll have something to direct water flow.
In your packet, I believe, and forgive me, there is, and I'm not sure which page it was.
Well, I know.
I think there's the just take this asphalt all the way up.
Right.
So it's essential. It is not going to be a public street. It's not going to be.
People are not going to be able to drive up there.
No, people will be able to drive up to it and walk on it the way they do today.
Correct. As they do today, it'll just be a paved condition so that in the case of fire in the hillside, that there is an ability for the fire department to have their trucks go down this paved area, turn around, or stage a fire truck at this location for dealing with fire.
Right now, this is based on staff's assumption that a crash gate or something will be acceptable to fire. I think it's within your purview to make a condition that we explore the possibility and strongly encourage that some sort of gate be put basically where the gate is today to prevent the public from driving there.
I think that would keep the status quo and
That's right. And it would alleviate a lot of the concerns.
a lot of the concerns. And I think the only thing that will do is just instead of dirt, you have a paved area, and that's it. And no public can access that. And I think that solves a lot of the problem.
That's right.
And it
what's
won't
the tallest
incentivize
a
any
crash
development
gate could
either.
turn into? I mean, how much of an obstruction is it? Are we talking about a 42-inch kind of a thing where someone could crawl over, or are we talking about something higher where?
I'm picturing being similar to the current gates. I know we've looked at another project where there was discussion about a crash gate in a similar but more urban situation. And I think it's a relatively low gate. Maybe it's 6 feet high. I don't know. But there would still be access for the public to go hiking and walk their dogs. It wouldn't be prohibitive,
But can
ideally.
we make that condition?
But
It's outside of the property, and can we do that outside? I mean, I've been told that I cannot, or we cannot make a condition outside of the property.
You have purview over the grading of this area, as we discussed. So if you have purview over the grading, I don't see why you wouldn't have the ability to make a
Grading
condition.
within the property, not outside
Also
of
on the fire,
property.
you've asked for drawings showing the grading at the fire road, and that's part of the project grading. So
I would hesitate because it deals with the fire department. I don't know their mandates and their codes. I would need to defer to the fire marshal in
Absolutely.
order to, or the fire chief to make that determination. But obviously that will be noted in whatever record decision you put forth as a strong encouragement to allow for a crash gate, and perhaps they even are able to move it closer to the end of Sleepy Hollow.
Mr. Chairman, just before we go to the public speakers, just for the record, I did share a picture that I took this morning when I was inspecting the site that I have now emailed staff.
Oh, perfect.
So that it can be incorporated into the record.
Okay.
And the picture depicts the gate area and the transition between the paved and the dirt and the trash can.
Last speaker is Justin Shun.
Hello, my name is Justin Shum. I live at 400 North Louise, Glendale. I'm the son of Eric and Wendy Shum. They're the property owners, so I'm speaking on their behalf. I just wanted to share a couple of things and maybe address some of the issues that you guys had. You guys are talking about compatibility. As you can see, I'm here with my wife. We just had our first son. He's 6 weeks old. No, we're not.
You need to address us.
I'm sorry.
You
I'm
need
sorry.
to address
I'm sorry.
us and into
Sorry.
the microphone.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm here with my son. He's 6 weeks old. We're not crazy. We're not whatever. We just want to live in this area. We love the area. We live in Glendale right now. We love the area of Glendale. We love the neighborhood, but we live in a condo right now where our neighbors are constantly knocking on the walls and yelling at us when they hear the baby cry. They smoke, and it comes into our apartment. We can't open the windows to let the air go through. We're just looking for a place to live. We're not looking to change the area. We're not looking to make it accessible to everybody. And there's a few things that I would like to address as well. Like in terms of setting a precedent. If you look at the zoning of all the plots, this plot is the last plot in the area that's zoned to build housing. Nothing else in the area, everything else is on the ridgeline, so you can't build property there anyways. If you're able to, now I know we addressed the issue with the road with the issue of illegal activities. For me, with my kid, I wouldn't want these people in my neighborhood either. So I'm not going to be pushing for it. I'm not going to be encouraging it. In fact, I feel like if there's a paved road, it might be easier for a patrol car to get up there to that spot where this illegal activity is happening. I know somebody else brought up an issue of compatibility with the house and the other houses in the area. If you stand up on top of the hill and you look into the valley of Glen Oaks, you'll see a lot of really beautiful houses. You'll see houses that are castles. You'll see like a pink house. There's so many different houses, but I feel like this house will fit in, and it's not an eyesore. It's not anything crazy like that. Let me see. I wrote down a couple more things to address. It's same thing with we don't want to build the road, we're okay if you allow it, like if we're allowed to build the property without a road, we're more than happy to do that. But it's just that the city has required us to. We're not trying to open this area up to everybody. And yeah, so like the property is going to be for my parents and my family, and we're going to live there. I know some of you, like I know I'm a lot younger than a lot of you, but some of you guys have said you've lived there for 70 years. You guys have lived there for however long you've lived there. You guys started out living there when you guys were younger, and so, like for us, we want to start a family there. We've been waiting for a long time, as you've heard previously. In 2013 is when they first submitted the proposals. We've had our son since then. We wanted to start a family in Glen Oaks, but now we've had to. We're living in a condo in Glendale. I believe yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the owner? No.
I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
Did the family or architect meet with the residents prior to today?
No, I've talked with one neighbor, the neighbor directly north of the property line. I believe he actually said he used to be on the design review board, and he owns 9 of the plots up there. And he said he was for the project. He's happy for it, but it appears that not many people are. So,
thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak that has not spoken? Okay.
You'd have to
come up, introduce yourself, and then give us a card. That's fine. Go ahead. I'll take it. Thank you. And introduce your name for the record.
My name is Sharon Londine, and I've lived in Glen Oaks Canyon for over 27 years. I just wanted to say that with people going up in the canyon, it is a problem because that whole area is a fire hazard area, according to the fire department. And also, it's designated a California Fair Plan area, which means we can't get insurance, or we have to pay more for insurance because of that area. So it is a real problem with people going up there and smoking. So if this road is going to allow more people to do that, I can see how that increases a risk for all of us. And that's all.
Thank you. The applicant/architect gets a rebuttal. Larry Lerschner, are you the one that's going to be taking on that role?
Yes, sir.
All right, come on up, introduce yourself, and you get 3 minutes to address some of the concerns.
Thank you, Larry Lerschner again. Firstly, I want to thank everybody for coming today because, quite frankly, I agree with the neighbors. I don't think that road should be paved, and we don't need it to be paved for this development. If you look at the end of the cul-de-sac there, it's far past the driveway that were proposed. The reason we designed the home the way we did and the reason we put the driveway where we put it is so we would not have to pave that road. So, I completely agree with everybody. I thank everybody for coming and expressing their views. I'm in agreement with those views. I don't think there was anybody that said they hated the house or they didn't want to see the house, built. And by the way, just for your information, I spent months going through this with the fire department.
That was my next question.
Okay, I'm glad. I'm going to answer it for you right now. I actually met the fire department, had them bring a truck up there, a fire engine. We drove up on the road. They turned around their fire engine up there on the dirt road, and they said, works fine. It's great. We're fine with it.
And that turnaround occurred around where?
Exactly. Can I show you on the drawing?
Yes, come on up.
Okay. Right here. Okay, so the fire department took their fire engine up here, turned around here, and came right on back down the road.
Because that's an existing hammerhead.
It's an existing hammerhead. It's already there. Now, if you look at this section, the way there's actually the end of the cul-de-sac is right about here. That's where it's paved, right to this
You're
point.
going to have to speak louder. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. The paving ends right about here, which is well past the driveway that we're proposing. So we don't need to pave this road. We're simply coming in right here, right on the paved road.
If you say the fire department wanted to have access to and a turnaround here and a hammerhead here, is there any way you could engineer that via working it in with some garden walls starting up the garden walls, bottom of the slope and build up to get that kind of a hammerhead? No.
This is something that is out of our purview.
I understand. I'm just asking it just because I think it's a logical question.
It is a logical question. I would say that that's feasible. Feasible. Yeah, I think it's feasible.
All right. Well, if you would, just let's go back to the podium where you were and finish your thoughts. Thank you. Thank you for coming up and pointing that out.
Okay, so in summary, this really has taken an inordinate amount of time because of these issues. We press forward and we try to go as fast as we can, and we're here, and I'm very happy to be here. So we would hope that you would take this into consideration, and we'd like to get Justin and his wife and family into this house.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close the public portion. Mr. Billion, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So this is one of these tough ones, so I don't know what we need to speak about. So I guess we spoke enough about the fire road and the paving and all that, and since we can't determine what the fire department would agree or would not agree to, it'll be like pointless to even discuss it at this point. So I'm just going to jump into the design of the house. After looking at these 3D rendering, it helped a lot to see like the mass and scale, and I understand that the way they located the house, they located away from like towards the end of the lot, which is like not visible from most places. So I think the mass and scale is fine. And I think the design is pretty nice. I just have an issue with the 2,800 cubic feet of grading that needs to occur. So I don't know if it's something that they can get a civil engineer online and just look at that one more time and figure out if there's a way to reduce that. That's the main issue I have. I think I like the design. I like the proportions. I like the materials they're proposing. And that's the main issue I have. And in regards to the fire road, as we discussed, if the fire department allows putting a gate at where they need to, where it's located right now, that would solve all the issues or most of the issues that these neighbors have, because it'll be the same thing. So that's about it.
Okay. Mr. Charchin.
Okay. So
thank you.
I'm going to probably apologize to my colleague because I don't know if you're going to be able to make your cutoff.
No,
before this case, you will. Maybe
I was going to say, unless you plan on speaking for 55 minutes.
I am very, very torn with this project. I spent a fair amount of time there this morning. One of my first observations in reference to the fire issue was that when I got there with my very large vehicle that you guys have seen in the parking lot, I saw the trash truck leaving. So I said, oh, good, there'll be a possibility for me to turn around. And I didn't have issue with that. The way that I will address the fire road issue is to state this. We are obligated to consider the overall cut and fill as part of our responsibilities on Design Review Board. As such, I don't see a need to add additional cut or fill in improving that roadway into the equation, because there's a lot of cut and fill already, mainly cut and removal on this project, which gives me pause in and by itself. If the fire department is insistent, and I understand that there is regulation that indicates that you have to have paved fire access adjacent and abutting residential development, and that's what we're kind of dealing with. Is there's this rule, and if you're in the city of LA, it's actually even worse because they actually have you go wider and so forth, and it's there for a reason, and I can give you firsthand information from my personal perspective that if you are facing a fire danger, which everyone is concerned about, and even insurance was discussed. My parents have a home that's standing today because they improved the fire access, but in that particular situation, it was on private property. Here, it's in improving a public point. But there needs to be some give and take there. And I think that gate and enhancing that gate is something that maybe staff could work with the fire department on to alleviate that issue. Because if the board decides to improve this property, we're not going to be able to say to the fire department, you can't have it paved, because that pavement is something that's required by the fire department, not design review board, not the city, but the fire department and the fire department's regulations on developed parcels. So then we get to the 2,800 cubic feet that needs to be moved. And I'm very perplexed with that, because I like the idea of having the fill coming in on the first project, as was suggested, that would basically have a net effect of not having dozens, if not almost 100 truckloads of dirt leaving that property. Then you have the issue of, okay, then you raise that property, and then it's more visible from people across the valley. And then the design elements that we have here, with the windows especially, from my perspective, become even more of a visible issue. Right, because you're across the valley, and it's actually a narrow valley, so you're not that far off. So the people that are on the streets immediately below are not affected. I agree. I walked those streets. I drove those streets. They don't see it. The flagpoles are not visible from the streets below. But if you raise it, because you're filling it in, you have that issue. So I can see where staff did that. I mean, this project, as you're standing on that berm and you're looking down, my first thought is, how do they design this? So I have to commend them for actually having put forth a design that addresses a lot of these issues, or at least two designs at this point that addresses these issues. We need to find a middle ground. I'm not comfortable with the 2,800 square feet of dirt. I don't think the neighbors are going to want those trucks going down that street, which no one's really addressed from the neighborhood during construction. And at the same time, we have these native protected indigenous trees. 5 of them are being removed. 2 of them have a pool that's going to be in the drip line area. Something that's on a separate permit that's an issue, but we need to consider that, I think, in our overall assessment of the cut. Then we have issues that usually are more significant, but in the context of this overall discussion become a little bit more minimal, such as, is stamped concrete appropriate for the driveway, given that we try to have permeable issues. We have drainage concerns, too, because then all of a sudden you have a drainage issue. There's notations in the report that was attached, in the tree report, that talks about the ravine, the water course, and concerns about the slope of the property. So translate that from the tree report to, okay, what happens with the water from the driveway and from the house pad now? That could add to some concerns, and I think those need to be addressed in the design. So overall, I have major reservations with the design that calls for the removal of so much dirt and the cutting down of so many trees. But knowing that there was a previous plan that at least addressed the cut issue in a different way, I think there's room to work with it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and I'll wait to see what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Charchian. Mr. Malikian.
So I will continue on Mr. Charchian's thoughts on the grading, but before I do that, I want to just talk about overall. And I think by right, somebody that if they're proposing a project on a legal lot, they're allowed to build. Our job is to look at the design, look at the massing, look at the scale, and look at the within where it's situated within the context of this property and the neighborhood. Having said that, there's a lot of conditions that are, I think, outside of our purview as far as the fire road and everything. So I think we're going to be able to do certain things, but express our concerns to the fire department. But there's not much we can do short of putting some considerations into the project. The big one of the issues that I have is the grading, and the 2,800 cubic yards of grading. To me, I think the way that they have determined this and the way that they've designed this. I think, without even getting into the civil work of this, it may actually increase. And the reason that I'm saying is, and I'm strictly talking about the design itself. And I could be wrong, because I don't have a civil drawing, so I don't have these drawings in front of me to be able to tell. But I'm looking at, if I may, I'm looking at this section. This section right here, this is cut somewhere within this area.
That's right.
Right? So this section is telling me that this much of a dirt is being removed, correct? And so if I carry this profile over, this profile is being cut straight across. I mean, how are you supposed to cut that much dirt with a straight line? That dirt somehow needs to be tapered into the earth, so somehow the existing dirt needs to carry over, and this needs to be graded into a proper slope, 1.5 to 1, as the architect mentioned. So I think this line is going to start merging back in here so that it gradually turns into this 1.5 to 1. So I think there is definitely some concerns and issues there that it hasn't been addressed properly. So looking at this, I think that's one problem. The second problem that I have is the actual design itself. To me, it lacks the architectural character. It's so-called, as the applicant stated, that it's a contemporary design, but to me it's non-stylish. I mean, putting a couple of aluminum windows doesn't make this project a contemporary. So I think there's a lack of consistency throughout, and also they missed the boat with addressing the hillside guidelines. To me, when you literally look at this, the higher mass is placed on the slope side, whereas the upper side should have been slowly coming down. So, I mean, simple solution is just to completely get rid of this, and it solves that problem. But I'm not here to take this out. Now, the other thing is that when you're up on top of here, this is what you're going to see. So how does the roof being addressed? What is this compared to? To me, I think the best part of the project is this, right here, the front entry. Right about this proportion. All these layers and levels that are coming together. The other problem that I see is that this long driveway, that it's, I would say, probably about 100 plus feet long. You drive down there, you end up here, and there's absolutely nowhere for somebody to come in and be able to back out. And I'm not sure how they're going to be able to do that.
How are they going to turn around?
How do they get the turnaround, I guess, as they come in, and if they are going to go down the driveway and park there, or are they going to park outside? So if they do come around, there's no turnaround area. So as far as placing this building right next to the garage, as this comes down, the only way that you can actually get in is to actually open the garage, come back, like do like a maybe 3-point turn or something like that. And the other issue is that how are they addressing the guardrails? How are they addressing this long large retaining wall. What does this look like? What does this retaining wall look like? Whereas like this one, how does this being controlled as far as, we're talking about, having family and kids, and so I think that the parameter of these, the footprint, the site planning needs to be addressed somehow, and that in its own will create an additional mess, in my opinion. So I think a proper drawing needs to be drawn and brought in with all the retaining wall heights. I think a proper slope, drainage addressed, and relationship between the house, the retaining walls, the slope, and probably a cut section through the entire property to be able to understand where does this start, where does this end, and how does this house sit on. Well, the problem is that where does this go? I mean, I just need to understand this because this right here, it's I guess that's the section. So, but it's not really giving me the information that I need. I think it's just lacking. It's just kind of sad to have this thing come in front of us after 2 years and it's still missing information for us to make a decision on that. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Mr. Malikian. Well, we do appreciate everyone coming out. I think overall you guys gave us a good viewpoint as far as the issues, the factors, and everything else that affects this given site. I got to say, I agree with most of what was said, as far as grading really being the biggest issue. And I'm going to really focus in on the private portion of the property first, and then I'm going to kind of talk about the outside fire road issues and et cetera. 2,800 cubic yards of grading is a lot. Most of the times when a house comes to this board with 1,500, 1,700, 1,900, we consider it a lot. So we take some special precautions in those situations. But when it has 2,800, it does raise an eyebrow, and you start to kind of think about, have they done everything that they can do to try to integrate a civil design to try to minimize that grading as much as possible? And based on the information that we have in front of us, there's room for further collaboration, I guess, between architect and civil. We need some sort of grading plan that has top of walls, that has top of wall information, has the contour information, that has that looks at how this grading that's proposed at 1.5 to 1, how it bleeds off from the graded area into the other areas and how that's going to affect the number. But most importantly, for it to try to minimize that number. Maybe the ideal scenario is a hybrid, somewhere between what was proposed and rejected by staff and what we have today, which is putting some of the graded shaved dirt back onto that flat side and then bringing it up slightly, maybe not 11 feet, maybe 4 feet, maybe 5 feet, in which case all of a sudden your 2,800 cubic yards goes down to 1,100, maybe, I don't know. But either way, you guys should look into those scenarios. As far as the nuisance of the area is concerned, we hear you. We don't have jurisdiction, obviously, to police that area. However, it certainly makes sense that there be some sort of a crash fence installed if this home goes through and if that road is paved. In my opinion, that road should not be paved. It just does not make sense to pave that road. And this is one of those situations maybe where you all as a group with the applicant could go and meet with fire, where you all sit down with fire and understand why they're asking for it and what those reasons are. If it is paved, it will help in the case of a bad fire. That's what they're looking at. They want to get their big vehicles down there. They want to set up a station. They want to be able to hydrate those vehicles with fresh water and to fight that fire. That's something for you guys to, I think, come together. You're going to have some time. You work with the applicant. You all go there as a group and understand if they will budge, if the fire department will budge. They are the big department in the city. No one tells fire department what to do. So if
And
they
don't
want
get
something,
anyone's hopes up.
they get their way. So you guys should just know that the applicant is being told to do something, and he doesn't want to do it. It's a big cost. He doesn't want to do it. But there's a common ground, I think, where you guys could all get together and try to work that out. And we're going to strongly condition that some sort of a crash fence be considered to not allow the general public to drive down and party in that area. Now, with the house being built, if it is built, and when it is built, you're going to have more eyes and ears, and they're probably going to be one of the best stewardess of that area as far as calling police when there is some illegal activity going on. So we'll kind of wanted to put that out there. As you are designing and redesigning and relaying out the site plan, you should get your soil report, your geotechnical report updated with the actual location of the house, wherever you end up, and that soil report should be updated because, as a gentleman did point out, the soil report was asking for additional borings, etc. So I think once you get your latest layout in there, that way you'll have more of an accurate geotechnical to work from. As far as that driveway and retaining walls are concerned, you should just cut some more sections and really concentrate on that area and try to get the cubic yards to get to half that amount as I indicated, but just provide us with more information so we really know what it looks like. So with that, I don't want to reiterate everything else that was said. I think those are my thoughts. So maybe, Mr. Platt, if you could try to summarize some conditions holistically. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add something for the applicant and also the public to understand. What we're facing with this fire department issue is not just a Glendale Fire Department issue. I think the Glendale Fire Department are some great people. They're usually very flexible, but they do have some very rigid guidelines, and that's what you were kind of going up against, which is the California Fire Code. Okay, and so the California Fire Code, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this, this is not legal opinion, does have a provision that absolutely regulates that says you do have to have it paved because it abuts a residence. So, for wildfires, yes, they go up the dirt road and they do that there. But for a residential abutment, that's what you're facing. So you would have to figure out if that's something that, if there's a process for getting a exemption from, if it actually does apply, if it can go partially, what those rules are. So the applicant can look into the fire code. So I just want to make sure that we're not directing people to vent or be angry at the Glendale Fire Department for doing something that they're following state guidelines on and state code on. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Charchin. Mr. Platt?
Sure. We have a bunch of conditions that we'll be putting on this. The first is to revise the site plan so that we show all of the aspects of the grading, including the retaining walls with the top of wall, showing the proposed grading with contour lines reflecting that, rather than the the existing contour lines in some of those areas.
Where the new one, where the proposed and the existing meet.
Right. Show what's going to be.
That's right.
Right. We are going to extend the grading plan to show what will be happening at the fire road, just so that we understand that it will hopefully be minimally altered, if at all. We are going to look at the possibility of the fire department improving a crash gate to meet the concerns of the community in terms of vehicular access, and indicate a strong recommendation from the board to find a way to solve that problem with a crash gate or some other solution. I have one question mark where Mr. Simonian asked the applicant if a shorter driveway might be appropriate, but I think based on Mr. Charchin's understanding of the law, we could ask fire about that, but there's a good chance that it'll have to extend along the property.
Not a driveway.
That's the fire road.
I'm sorry, I meant the fire road. So, I wrote the wrong word, but
In other words, if the applicant is able to provide some sort of a hammerhead or turnaround
earlier,
which coincides with the end of the building, would that suffice for fire?
Yeah, so we'll put that in our discussion with fire. A general concern from all board members to find a way to reduce the grading in general, whether this is a compromise solution between the earlier proposal or the existing proposal. That would be one direction that we will work with the applicant. There's a staff condition or a recommended condition about if you look at the proposed driveway versus the existing landform where there was kind of a driveway that was cut that kind of goes down to that flat pad area. One possibility would be to have the garage at the lower level rather than at the second level. We can work with the applicant to use the existing kind of landform driveway, which could reduce the grading. So we can work with the applicant to see if that's even possible.
Pavers?
Go.
Pavers on the driveway?
Well, I'm not done.
Sorry.
There's a lot more.
Sorry.
Okay, that's the gate. So we're going to investigate ways to make the driveway more permeable and to show the drainage on it, to show how the drainage is going to work from the property, not just the driveway, but also the pad area of the property. Mr. Charchin expressed some concern about the loss of trees. I didn't hear that from anyone else, and we have had the arborist approve the mitigation plan. Is that okay as proposed, but we'll avoid any further removals?
Well, let me maybe suggest to my colleagues that at least the indigenous tree report reflect the actual square footage of the home. And maybe that changes some of the mitigation issues, because on the report, it's a 4,200 square foot home with a 400 square foot driveway. Unless I'm looking at the wrong one.
There was an update to that particular one, so I'm not sure if the
one that was attached to here. Is there another one?
There was an update back in December 2015, which was reflecting the current.
I have the June 23rd, 2014 version.
And it looks like unfortunately, I actually have the December of 2015 with regards to the current one. So it looks like there might have been a clerical goof.
Okay, so if there is a new one, then
there's a new one.
I would like to see it.
Yes. Why don't I give that to you right now?
Okay, continuing, we actually did get some design comments, which I'm not sure if everyone concurs, but there's a general concern about architectural character and consistency, so we can work with the applicant to find ways through cladding materials, shifting volumes, and changing roof forms to focus on retaining the architectural character more that's seen at the front entry area, and possibly have that style reflected more at some of the other portions of the design. There was concern about the upper mass or the mass being pushed to the downslope side of the house, so we can work with the applicant to find a way if the mass can be shifted more toward the uphill area at the upper level. We will need more information on the drawings about the driveway retaining walls, what they're made out of, whether they require guardrails or if they'll just have curbs, whatever else will be involved depending on the elevation change. I mentioned revising the site plan. We will ask for an enhanced section through the property. And if you could give us any more details, Mr. Malikian, about what you would want to see on that.
I'm sorry, which one?
When you asked for the full site plan, but then you looked and you said, well, this one was sort of showing what you were looking for, but it wasn't enough.
I just need to get a big picture. I mean, with all the retaining walls, all the sloped, graded area, with the house sitting there, where the pads are, just kind of get a couple of aerial perspectives of just kind of understanding what they're doing.
And that's focusing in the area where the cut is proposed next to the road?
Exactly.
Okay.
I will highly suggest for them to look at the design and kind of open the hillside guidelines and kind of go through that and compare it to what they're proposing. Look at the window placements. I mean, everything. Overall design, I think it needs a lot of work.
Okay.
And Mr. Platt, we have about half an hour until Mr. Malakian needs to leave.
Hey, you guys gave me all these comments.
I know.
I'm almost done.
We'll just finish this and I'll just leave it.
Okay. I don't know if there's any speakers besides the architect, in which case you might just want to say your thoughts and then go, if possible. If possible.
It is a 3-point turn.
Yes, Mr. Platt.
And I'm not sure if we can force this, but there was several people mentioned finding a civil engineer to review these drawings. Condition?
Yeah, to reduce grading as much as
And Vilya, you may have answered this already. Does the latest geotech report show the current layout? Well, we'll verify whether it does or not, and if it doesn't, we'll have the geotech report revised to show the current layout, or whatever we work with the applicant, assuming that might change.
That's right, the final outcome.
So after we come up with our design, then we'll get the geotech updated. And then there was a comment looking for more section cuts at the driveway than have been provided from...
Yeah, I think the way they're depicted with rivet, since the seating, with the way they're oriented on the sheet, so the applicant should just take a look at that and provide them in the context of where the road is and when the house is, so you can kind of see a natural transition and get a sense for how those retaining walls work.
Would some of this work if we did some more lateral sections cutting across the site, so we see... we'll just work with them on getting more information, either through the aerials that Mr. Malikian mentioned or additional sections. Okay.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, there's
so
also
just fast forwarded a couple of years in this project. Nothing.
There's an idea also that
it's not happening. I know
a physical model could help if you're not satisfied with the renderings.
Well, we didn't originally have them. Now that they're here, they really illustrated quite a bit.
I think they need to have a better judgment of the perspective and the renderings they're giving to give us a better placement of the house and the context that it's going in, so that we can see the road above and the graded hill and the driveway, how it's coming through. And as the architect said, that they do this on a Revit, so it shouldn't be a problem. It should be a very quick rendering.
Okay, so we'll add a condition to adjust the renderings to reflect the full extent of the site and all of its features. Right. That's it.
I believe there was also a recommendation, or I don't know if it was a condition, to get railing detail along the perimeter of the drive.
Yeah, we have that already.
Was that mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did, I promise.
Sounds good.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll move to return for redesign with the conditions and considerations.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I thought we were heading towards...
I know.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Heading towards one.
I thought we were going to, with all these conditions, doing it to staff, but you feel that we need to get it back.
Oh, staff would rather return for redesign is fine.
All right. Motion.
I want to see it. Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Malikian, a second by Board Member Benlian. In terms of roll call, Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchin?
Yes.
Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
Chairman Simonian?
Yes.
The motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. Our last case is PDR 160-3430, 1058 Roberta Avenue. Mr. Joe is the planner. Mr. Joe, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Allow me to move the board. I'll try and make this brief. It's been a kind of an odd, long meeting. Once again, this is at 1058 Roberta Avenue. The existing property is a lot that's approximately a little bit under 9,000 square feet. It's zone R2250. It's on Roberta Avenue, which is on a block that's between Glen Oaks Boulevard and San Fernando Road, which doesn't show on the raised map, but it's at the end of the block down here. It's rectangular in shape and has a relatively flat topography. There aren't any protected trees or on or within 20 feet of the property. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing Spanish-style home that's approximately a little bit under 1,000 square feet. It has an accessory building on the lot and was constructed in 1925. They're proposing to construct a two-story, approximately 6,500 square foot residential congregate living facility with medical assistance, which will include two attached two-car garages. The bedroom configuration, as shown on the floor plans, will have 8 bedrooms with a maximum of 12 beds. The existing single-family dwelling on the property of the Spanish style is not eligible for designation at a local, state, or national level. The project is exempt from CEQA under Class 3 of new construction. And in the background for cases on this property, it did receive approval for the land use of a residential congregate living facility with medical assistance on site by the planning hearing officer last month. And this is for first-time submittal for final review by the Design Review Board. Before I move on to staff's analysis, did the board have any questions?
Yes, at that hearing, was the FAR also approved for this big of a building and lot coverage, et cetera, on this amount of land?
Correct. It met all the zoning standards as far as height, FAR, lot coverage, landscaping, parking, et cetera.
You mean it meets it on the 2250 by right, or it was a discretionary approval granted to the applicant?
It was by right. There were no variances or AEs of any deviations.
But
I believe.
What is the lot coverage that's the requirement on a 2250?
I have my zoning code in front of me.
Actually, the lot coverage allowed versus the lot coverage provided, they are just under 50% of lot coverage at 49.8. They would have a maximum FAR of 85%, and they are proposing 73%.
It's on the first page.
It's on the first page of the
But
plans.
when I'm looking at the site plan, more than 49% is covered. I mean, if I'm looking at A 2.1 or 2.2, that's like 70%.
There's parking with permeable paving at the rear corner, which helps increase what we're considering as landscape area.
But I guess what I'm saying is, if you look at A 2.2, without getting a ruler out, just looking at the building, that seems to be more like 70%. And that's why my question was that a discretionary hearing that was?
Based on the figures submitted by the applicant and the architect, Sako Marcusi is in the audience, you can best speak to
We
that.
could ask the architect.
It's 49.8%, which would be under the maximum 50%.
Okay, so we'll ask them. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Joe.
Thank you. Just going to the staff's analysis for the first category, site planning. The site planning for the facility will be centrally located in the lot, as we were just discussing. It's similar in surrounding properties as far as site planning. It's appropriate for the lot. The setback will be 20 feet 9 inches from Roberta. Roberta is over here, and it will have a setback about 21 feet. The 2-car garage is provided. Will be accessed from an alley, which is north of the property. And also there will be a 5th parking spot, which will have permeable pavers on the east side of the property. The landscape plans will provide drought tolerant throughout the property with new landscaping. Onto massive scale, the overall massive scale of the project, staff feels appropriate. The neighborhood is comprised of primarily 1-story and 2-story single-family residences, and there are a few three-story multifamily residences. The overall height will be 28 feet 6 inches, where 29 feet is permitted with a pitched roof. The second floor will be stepped away from Roberta, approximately 40 feet away, which provides high articulation, and it will blend with the neighborhood context. Last, on the design and detail, the architectural styles exhibited in the neighborhood are of Spanish, craftsman, minimal traditional, and as well as nondescript multifamily dwellings or multifamily buildings. The Spanish style for the proposed facility is well designed and relates well to the neighborhood context. The applicant proposed to have recessed windows, which would be a mix of casement and fixed windows with multi-light mutton patterns, and they will relate to the context accordingly to the window sizes. So the grid patterns will be accordingly to the window sizes as it moves along from each facade. At the front, they will have a large fixed window with a semicircular arch, which enhances the appeal from Roberta. And the materials that they provide will be of smooth steel trowel stucco, stacked clay tile vents, and it will have two-piece barrel tiles for the roofing material. And it has decorative wrought iron railings and wood trellises. Overall, staff supports the design with some minor conditions. The first one was to clarify material and provide cross-section details for the windows and surrounds prior to plan check submittal. Exterior muttons should be provided for all windows and exterior windows with glazing. Both of the materials for the fiberglass or the wood-clad aluminum is something that staff feels it can support. We just noticed that on the elevations, it does say aluminum clad, and then on the window schedule, it says, this one says aluminum clad. I think there were some that said fiberglass.
Yeah, somewhere it's inconsistent.
Right. But okay. And then the second condition was specify the paving material to be used at the Grass Creek parking space located at the northeast portion of the lot, which is the outdoor parking area, which is on the east side. We're just asking for clarification on the paving material. And the third one would be ground cover used for the Grass Creek parking space. It must consist of a California-friendly plant, particularly of a hardy type, that can handle somewhat of the of car parking above it. But this concludes staff's presentation. However, before I conclude, I did receive an email from the public. It was not so much for the design, but they're kind of reiterating their concerns about making sure that deliveries from trucks or for food for the medical for the residential congregate facility is taken from the alley. I know it's not of a design concern, just for the respect of the people making these comments. I just wanted to provide that they wanted to make sure that any maintenance or any type of delivery for this facility is provided by the alley and not floating onto the road.
A couple of questions. For this product type, as far as the design standards are concerned, do they have common open space requirements?
Interesting question. This is built to multifamily standards because it has a single hallway where each room is technically accessed by a single hallway. You can virtually go through anywhere in the building. It's a congregate living facility, which is one unit, and they provide the minimums for a one-unit multifamily home. But we can't define it as a single family or a multifamily because it's a residential congregate living facility.
And so, you know the design best. You've been working with the applicant. If the people that are going to be living there and staying there, if they want to get some fresh air, where would they go?
There is they do have private outdoor space. They have patios outside. They have like French doors on the first level, and then on the second level, there's balconies. There's also an outdoor area which has a trellis area for them to have an outdoor seating. I think there's a barbecue out here also as well. That's the outdoor spaces they provide for the project.
And so the exact discretionary release that applicant received from another hearing, which was a senior officer, I would assume, or was it planning committee?
It was by a planning hearing officer, which is a senior staff member.
That's right. That was to allow for this use on an R1250 site.
That's correct.
2250. Yeah, okay. Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Joe.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Marcosi, welcome.
Finally. You know, I was on time, but I forgot the material board. I went down to get the material board, and you put me at last. So.
Well, staff called out for you. You weren't here.
Yes,
and then I told the public that we were going to move you last, and it would have been unfair to then say, oh, just kidding. We know Mr. Marcucci, so we're going to get him next.
I learned my lesson. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Simonian, members of the Design Commission. My name is Sako Marcucci. I'm with Al-Jaji Marcucci Architects. I think Dennis summed it up pretty well, what we're intending to do. This is primarily a building which is designed in an R2250, which will allow us for a three units multifamily, or if you go with low-income housing element with the project, you could go up to 6 units. But regardless, this is a one building, one operation, which allows for a 12-bed congregate living. And it's a medically assisted living. That's the way that the state describes this type of use facility or facility use. The building is primarily designed in a traditional Spanish Mediterranean style, with punched-in windows, pretty simplified wrought iron rails, tile roof, smooth finish plaster, and cast stone trims as presented on the drawings there. I brought, you do have photographs of the sample materials, but I brought the actual samples for you to pass around and take a look. This facility requires 4 parking spaces for the 12 beds provided, and we're providing 5, one in addition to what is required. As in our hearing for the use about a month ago, the concern of some neighbors, a few of them that showed up, was primarily traffic and delivery to this building. And I understand since then from my clients that most of we have a kitchen there, and they have a cook that will come in and cook for the people who will be staying there, and so it would not be in like everyday delivery trucks or so it's not that kind of an operation. In terms of you had a question about the lot coverage.
Yeah, because I'm looking at your, lot coverage allowed, which is like, say 4,400 square feet.
Right.
And you're showing that you have lot coverage provided of 4,300 square feet.
Right.
And just doing quick math, you're close to 7,000, and you're a lot more than 50%.
Well, I trust my AutoCAD calculator. I put a perimeter line around the building, and I don't have projections over 30 inches in terms of eaves and roof lines that I have to consider as a coverage. So with that, I come up with that square footage.
I think you're going to get stuck in plan check. I mean,
I need to.
You got to go.
Yeah. Sorry.
So Mr. Malekian needs to basically then excuse himself from the hearing.
And we'll make note of it that Mr. Malikian had to leave at 8 o'clock. That's fine.
Thank you. I don't want you to have a problem later during plan check, but this, you know, you look at your roof.
Mm-hmm.
It's clearly over 50%. You're at 70%, 75%. So you're going to have an issue later. Then you got to come back to us with a whole new design. So it's not a matter
Surely I don't have a problem with the coverage.
Or we can add a condition to verify a lot coverage drawing.
If you'd like, you know, I don't know how to. I could divide it into squares and have square and put dimensions on a diagram.
That's fine. You'll go through it with staff. I'm pretty confident that when you're done with the analysis, you're going to be over 50%. Just looking at it. But I trust you in that you'll go through that analysis.
Well, hopefully I've been doing this for past 30 some odd years. I know
We've been at it too, my friend.
Okay.
we're not
But
spring chickens.
I'll go back and check it.
That's right.
You know, for sure, yes. You know.
Okay.
I don't know, if you have questions about the project, I'm happy to answer. If not,
I have just two quick questions. The interior, so this is for medical use, so it's contemplated, I'm assuming, that some of the residents are not going to be in a medical condition to drive, right? And that's why you have the reduced parking.
yes, correct.
So with that also, and how the interior might affect the exterior of the building with requirements, this 3'6" hallway, is that the minimum required by code for people in wheelchairs? Is that what that number is?
Well, this is it's an
44 inches.
it's an ambulatory. I mean, it's not specifically designed for wheelchair, but it would probably have people with wheelchair and ambulatory persons also.
Okay, so, but that would meet that, the 3'6"?
No, you need minimum 44 inches, and then if someone's coming in a gurney, you're going to need, I think.
But were you reading 3'6"? I think we have a 4 feet hallway.
I'm reading at the front of the building between the corner of the two-car garage and the stairwell.
Yeah, as depicted, your drawings have a 3'6".
A 3'6". Okay. I mean, you know, it could be accommodated. It's not an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, the bedrooms can be reduced.
Yeah, we could push the walls back 3 inches.
That's going to
each.
be my next question. Is
3 inches
are the bedrooms
each way,
are the bedroom sizes dictated by by state code?
Yes, by state code. They need a minimum 180 square feet, and we're over that. We're 200 plus.
That's just. I mean, from our perspective, it is the entire design. If you have room to move, that's fine.
Yes.
You also have some closets that potentially could go to play with. Okay,
sure.
Is this a project that has on-site staff living there?
Yes, on-site one. Yeah, one person. 24 hours, there'll be one person. What? I'm sorry. Staff. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
there's a 24-hour staff.
Yeah, staff members. I understand. I just was wondering if there's if it's contemplated that someone's going to live there. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I meant on the window. I want to have the flexibility because of if it's a budget issue, have the flexibility of being able to. Initially, my thoughts are aluminum-clad wood windows and patio doors, but if it becomes too much in terms of budget, I'd like to be able to go to my alternative, which is the fiberglass.
I have no other questions, Chairman.
All right. Do we have any more questions with our? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any. Well, no, that's not right. I do have a card. Anna Galafian. Good evening.
My name is Anna Galfayan. I have property right across from this particular project, and I'm also in medical field. I have driven by the project site several times, and it is very tiny site. Next to it is bail bonds across 98 cents, and right next to it, adjacent, are apartment buildings. So traffic is tremendous. Parking is impossible in the area, and it creates safety. As far as aggregate and medical space, First of all, state is changing rules and regulations. So pretty soon, there has to be a live-in person, and there are supposed to be people that care for patients on daily basis, so they will need parking space. So whatever will be attached to the building size probably will be taken by providers during the day. The next issue, the ratio for medical space says 1:5. So if it's 6,000 square feet property, then it should be close to 30 parking spaces. Now, I understand it's not a full medical quality project, but there is still supposed to be some state regulations for particular projects, and I might not be the best informant on the particular needs. But if you look at the project, basically from this map, it looks really huge. It does not match the area. It does not fit into this particular area, and I invite you to drive by and go and see. Aggregate medical buildings are very much popular these days. They are taking over. They are needed for City of Glendale. Maybe we don't have enough, but this particular site, for the size of the project, with 12 bed facility, with personnel that you need to have on site, because state is coming up with the changes as of August 1st, will impose significant issues on the surrounding areas. So to me, it looks overdone as far as size especially. And parking, for the future, there's areas that are said that there will be patio and outside areas. You have to have for patients areas and physical activity, exercise, care, etc., because those are going to be not a nursing home patients. Majority of them are supposed to be ambulatory, so you have to include those outside areas to the size of the building as well, to the size of the project. So I don't know how many issues or how many changes it will involve the city planning department to, be aware of or work on, because the rules are changing as of August 1st.
And do you know what the rules are changing to specifically? Someone in the medical field might have a better
there are
idea
lots
than
of speculations, but the ratio of employees and requirements is how many per patient you need and what's supposed to be staff that is supposed to be there present. Now, if this is medical, aggregate living facility, you have to have space for paramedics, for fireplace. You have to consider. I don't think those cars and vehicles will fit through the alley. The alley is very narrow. There is basically nearly no alleys right behind the bail bonds. So I don't know how it is possible to create the building and make it working and functional with all the changes that are coming, in addition with the size of the lot, with the size of the project, and with the location. Location is very difficult. If it was at the end of Roberta, closer to San Fernando, it would have been much better. But at this north corner, there are more apartment buildings and density is much higher. And again, this is my view as a neighbor and as a medical field professional.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this case? Yes, please come on up, introduce yourself, and then afterwards just fill out one of the cards there by the front door. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Leon Arsenian, and I'm the owner of this project. I would like to emphasize about the parking first. The concern about my neighbor is we have one additional parking that the code was asking for us. We have, instead of 4, we have 5 parking spaces, which one designated for trucks or anything. There's no trucks coming there. There's probably small minivans to deliver food for once a week. And about the traffic, there are going to be 12 people which are not driving. Medically, they are not going to be able to drive. So that's another issue that eliminated the traffic, because if there will be another building with residential, every house has 2 or 3 cars. That's obvious. Here you don't have vehicle at all, only one nurse, and sometimes, the medical doctor or OT or PT will come to visit once or twice a week, and plus that additional parking, which will provide additional space. This is one additional that the courts required. And about the traffic, about the traffic, so I think it's obvious there is no traffic issue. About the area, area is really very appropriate by my thinking, because it's very close to the commercial zoning. In the back is the multi-family residential housing, and I got lots of support from that housing and neighborhood too. They like this project. Plus, the Glendale has the housing project for elderly and limited disability people. So this is one of the projects that solved that problem too. So I believe this is very suitable for the environment. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
And just for clarification, if I may, I did a quick calculation of the lot coverage, and I think he's right on.
He's on.
Even though it looks deceiving and I couldn't believe it, but when
go.
you added the numbers, it's working.
Very good. It was verified. It was a visual, whatever.
Sevan's the official fact checker of DRB.
Is that the other hat?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. Anybody else in the audience that would like to speak? Nope. Of course you do. Mr. Marcosi.
Thank you so much. We're proposing, I'm not sure what an aggregate medical facility is, but this is a congregate living. It's not a medical facility. People who are usually out of a medical facility and they need temporary care in order to go to their homes, this is primarily providing a service as such for a person that will take care of them day and night for a few days or a couple of weeks, whatever, so until they are completely on their feet, and then they go home. So this is a care facility of that sort. And as my client mentioned, none of them would be driving. If somebody is coming from a hospital or a doctor's or a clinic, they would come in. We have alleys on both sides of our property, and we have a street on front. Unlike any other property, we're not accessing from the front of the property, so there's ample parking along our street for our neighbors to park, because right now it's lacking because we have driveway. And all our traffic is directed towards the alley, which are the widest in city of Glendale. 20 feet is the widest alley you can find in city of Glendale, and both corners have very wide alleys. In addition to that, I forgot to bring it up that open area required for this project is 40 square feet of 40 square feet of private open space and 200 square feet of common open. Now, I believe, I don't want to approach the board, but I believe I have probably about 700 plus square feet of open space, which is utilized with a trellis element with barbecue chairs and table. In addition to that, each unit on the first floor has a patio, which is in excess of 40 square feet, and we have large terraces on the upper floor for 2 other bedrooms up above. So this is well in excess of what the code requires as far as open space is concerned for this type of facility. And thank you for doing your quick math. I am sort of lazy. I use the computer, the AutoCAD program, and that gives me, I trust that, so that gives me the square footage. So that's how I arrived to that number. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Do we have questions?
No.
A couple of questions, Mr. Marcosi. I noticed there's no elevator. There's no elevator.
No.
So how these individuals, I would imagine, are elderly, they're not in the best shape. how are they going to get to the second floor? And then, God forbid, if there's an issue, how's the fire department going to go up there with a gurney and bring them down?
Well, for a second story access, if you have same use facility on the lower levels of this building, you already have 8 beds at the lower level. So that's like we're talking about almost 70% of use. So if you have like useful facilities on the upper floor, you do not have to provide an elevator, because if a non-ambulatory person needs to use the facility, there's 8 beds at the lower level that they could use.
But there's a TV and a den upstairs, so...
Right, and there's also...
What if a guy that's staying downstairs wants to go to the TV?
Well, there's same use in the lower level. The living, they'll have TV and access to all the entertainment that you have upstairs.
The common dining area, the way you've shown the tables, a guy in a wheelchair won't be able to kind of go sit there and eat because of the clearances are tight, the way you've illustrated it. So where will people be eating? Where would the main dining area be for these folks?
Well, on the plan, one end of the building has the living quarters, so that's where they'd be spending time away from their beds. And on the back end of the building, those are not fixed tables and chairs. They're regular tables and chairs.
I realize that, but you have 12 bedrooms, so I assume there's going to be 12 people eating.
Not all at the same time. You might have 8 patients or 8 people staying there. You might have 4. Not all of them are fed at the same time. They are probably on medication. They have different hours, so it's not a dining facility. That's a place.
And you can use a long rectangular table.
Yes.
I think the furniture you're showing is deceiving.
Well, I'm just simply showing the intention of the use of that area. It's not. I don't know what kind of tables and chairs they're putting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mr. Charshin, you want to start as well?
I'm going to close the public
We've got
hearing.
to close the public hearing, and there's nobody else, so...
Yeah, I'll start. No problem. So I'm actually somewhat familiar with state regulations on this, and I agree with the speaker that indicated that there's going to be changes in the pipeline. However, those changes I don't think are things that we would be concerned about. That's a liability for the developer. If the developer builds it and there's changes, they're going to have to deal with it. And if they end up with a space that's not serving that function, then they end up with a space not serving that function. However, my comments to that point would be, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you consider making your entry and exit doors wider, and look at that hallway and consider making that hallway slightly wider. You also have some interior doors, especially the ones leading to the bathrooms, that might not be compliant down the road, and so those are things that I'm just leaving you with as just food for thought. Some of my comments were things that concerns were some like you've addressed. Who's going to be living upstairs, and the explanation is correct from my knowledge base, which is that they have these like areas upstairs, so those folks get to kind of have their own space and are usually more mobile than not. So somehow this all legally works out from that perspective. So I'm okay with that aspect. Now, as far as the design, this lot lends itself to this design, and that's what it really comes down to for me. The fact that you have that alley access, the fact that you have the longer lot lends itself to the design. The only design elements, and I think that the design is appropriate, the mass and scale are fine. I think it's a good Spanish rendition. The issue that I had was with the front entryway. I think that it stylistically is nice, but functionally it, I think, is going to be problematic. So I would ask, given that we know what the use is for the building, that I think that needs to be revisited. I think you have to have a straight shot to the street. I think it needs to be a little wider. These types of things that I think will affect design should be considered. And then where's... And then we have the issue of the windows. I'm okay with fiberglass. I think that if it's done properly, it can work. Here, the applicants actually kind of used some of the detailing that you were talking about at the first project to kind of cap off the archways. So stylistically, I think that I'm in support of it. I think that's it. The entries need to be rethought. Just make sure I have no other comments here. Sorry, it's a little later in the evening, so I got to reference back to our notes. No, I've addressed everything I wanted to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charchin. Mr. Bellion.
Okay, looking at the floor plan, I'm going to kind of highlight the similar issue that Mr. Charchin was talking about, which is the corridor. I see these in the first floor plan. You see these like little storage rooms with the door swinging out, and it seems to be that area is too tight. I think these kind of storage rooms need to be relocated somewhere else, maybe towards the back of the place or something, and open up that corridor, make it and not your standard 3 feet, something like 4-6, something that's easy access. Because I mean, I deal with like my parents, and sometimes like they're elderly, and the fire department has to come like once take my dad to the hospital. It's really, they have hard time accessing and bringing the equipment, so that's important. I think Mr. Charchin has a very valid point. In terms of design, I agree with him. It's a nice design, and it has character. I like the mass, the scale. The scale is fine, and I really like. If I can approach the rendering, I really like what the architect did in this portion here, because you have this like massive building that's sitting on the side, and he did a very nice touch by breaking up the building over here, where now if you look at it from across the street, it seems like it's like two houses. And I would like even to highlight that kind of break a little more. I don't know how, but you're a smart, creative guy. Maybe you can come up with something where you can highlight this cut a little more, so that two houses kind of look stands out more. But overall, material is nice. Orientation, the use of the alley, it all works. So good job. That's it, Mr.
All right. I agree with the board members. The design is done very nice. It's a very nice design. When I look at the massing, the Spanish, the style of it, the characteristic of it, the use of materials, the way the windows are proportioned, the location, the roof itself. So overall, I think the facade is well thought out, well designed, no issues whatsoever. The materials are of high quality, so that's going to be an addition as well to the neighborhood. And fiberglass is a good compromise. I think I think there's some consensus there that that's not an issue. I'm glad you verified the square footage. That was something that was sticking out to me. Access, I absolutely agree that needs to be worked out. I think a lot of effort has gone into the exterior of the building, and the same kind of effort should go on the interior to make sure that it's feasible and that it works. So in other words, if somebody gets a call and the fire department's coming in with a big gurney and they're moving the gurney and they have the drip stick next to it and two guys are running by, they need to have a straight shot from the entrance down the hall to those rooms. Your lower level bedrooms, you have those 3-foot wide bathrooms. Those are even tight for an active person to use, let alone somebody that's elderly that needs to grab bars that could use the ADA support bars. So my humble opinion is that you're packing too much in here. You've made the design work, But as far as the program is concerned, I think it's got one or two too many rooms. And that's my humble opinion. I think that, and this board really doesn't have all that much jurisdiction over the interior of the number of rooms anyways. But I think once you really get into the nitty-gritty of the access, getting the widths that you need, working out some of those bathrooms on the interior bedrooms so they're more workable for an elderly person that might be a disabled use to get in there. Coupled with the fact there's no elevator and all those things, you kind of start putting them all together. And how functional is the space? And whatever we built is a long-term building that's going to be there for a long time. And you don't want it turning into one of those places that is of lower quality just because somebody that can't afford the good care goes there. So that's not what we're trying to promote. We're trying to make sure that it's marketable, it's palatable, feasible, etc. So that's my humble opinion, but again, that's an interior thing which this board doesn't have jurisdiction over, but I think you want it to be successful, so I think you would look at it to make sure that those clearances work. Overall, the design is compatible, and there's already been another hearing that has approved the use on this specific zone. So I'm in support of the project based on some of the comments, conditions, requirements that we've discussed.
The only thing I would just add is I did notice that the landscape plan has a different interior design. So we just want to make sure that maybe a condition or recommendation that whatever the final set is that goes to plan check has that addressed so that there's no confusion. I know that for me it's confusing. For you guys it might not be, but we have a bathroom in the middle of the hallway, for example, and so we want to make sure that that's dealt with at some point. Mr.
Yes, Mr. Marcosi. Yes, please.
To open up the hearing.
You could come up, actually, because we can't have cross-communication.
Yes.
State your name for the
yes.
record.
Sarko Marcusi with Algeria Marcus Architects. Board member Charchian brought up a valid point, but I sort of need a clarification on that. When you say access, straight access, you mean where the walkway from the street jogs and comes into the building?
Sure. Let me. This. I mean, I'm not. I think stylistically, it's fine. And if this was a residential home for a family, it would work. However, you have. Let's see. Where am I?
Should
way over
2.1.
You could just point
here.
Yeah.
See, you have this walkway. This 5 foot,
Right.
1.5 or 5 foot and
5 feet.
and a half inch walkway. It comes here, then it cuts to the right, goes over, and then goes through this entranceway to enter into this doorway. Right? I think you have to have a straight cut through here, and then make that doorway wider, because what you're going to have is if you do have an emergency situation, that's not going to be a functional access point. You're not the medics come in through here, going through here are not as functional as having this area that's landscaped with that palm trees. Maybe a straight driveway.
So maybe in other words, just continue that
straight,
just
and have a little landscaped landing area. To just be able to allow access. My recommendation just to rethink that from the gurney perspective, from the wheelchair perspective, because you're going to need that, I think.
Okay.
And here the difficulty here is we have multiple layers of regulation that you're going to have to comply with, and potential changes to that regulation down the road. So the reason I'm bringing this up and spending time on it is, as those regulations come, you might have to change the design of what's actually built, right? And what we're looking at is the design as presented, and when we approve it, if it's approved, you have to abide, or your clients have to abide by it for the next 5 years. So we want to be clear that we want to rethink those points, because I think that those 2 points, the entry and the exit, or the front and back porches, are, I think, going to be subject to change with the accessibility issues that are coming for these types of facilities.
Well taken. Thank you.
That was the issue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Platt, do you want to go over the conditions?
Sure thing. This time we don't have too many. We're going to ask the applicant to just verify the lot coverage calculations through an additional drawing showing how that was achieved through the CAD program. We're going to ask that the front entry pathway be converted to a straight shot from the gate at the entry to the front porch.
I would say to explore it for accessibility issues.
Okay, explore with building and safety, explore for accessibility.
For accessibility and gurney issues, emergency issues, all that stuff.
Okay. But a straight shot looks like that might be...
I mean, that's just, but I'm not an expert on that, so I wouldn't want to dictate it as a straight shot.
We heard that fiberglass is okay for the windows, but so we'll leave it as an option of either aluminum-clad wood or fiberglass. Board Member Benlian mentioned trying to highlight the break at the center. It sounded kind of like a consideration rather than a condition. Is that true?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So we'll consider that.
Excuse me. Thank you.
And
excuse me.
We often see landscape plans that don't have the exact floor plan, but as long as the footprint's there, we'll make sure that that's accurate.
I just wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah. And then for all of the discussions about the interior, as Chair Simonian said, we have no purview, so we're not going to put that in conditions, but can be obviously advice to the owners and the architect.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we can put it in as
Well, no,
conditions.
we can in the sense that it might affect exterior design. So in other words, if they have to adjust the hallway and they didn't have space, and then they had to then there might be exceeding the...
Right, and the way that works is a little backwards. If they can't solve the problem in the existing envelope, they're going to run the new envelope by staff. We're going to make a determination whether that's in keeping with your approval, or if not, we'd bring it back to you.
Fair enough.
And that's everything.
That's it.
We have a motion?
I'll make a motion this time. Motion to approve with conditions.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve with a motion by Board Member Charchian and a second by Board Member Benlian. This will be roll call. Board Member Benlian?
Oh, yes. Just Dennis, hold on one second. Did we have any staff conditions? We also had 3 staff conditions as written.
That's fine.
Wait. Sorry.
That's fine, Chairman.
Just so it's official. Just so it's official.
Yes.
Okay, so this will be roll call for to approve. Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
Mr. Chair Simonian?
Yes.
That is a 3 ayes, 0 nays, with 2 absent to approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have some minutes to approve.
We
do we have
do.
a quorum on it as far
We
as
do. All 5
approval?
board members were present. You 3 board members are able to vote on the minutes from May the 12th.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I will second it.
Yes, is that?
Yes, a second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Board Member Benlian, a second by Board Member Charchian. Board Member Benlian?
Yes.
Board Member Charchian?
Yes.
And Chairman Simonian?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0. At 8:30, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Adjourned.
All in favor?
Are you going to
Better than 10:15 or 10:30?